Hello. Hello to everyone around the world, wherever you're watching, whatever time zone you're in. We're in a slightly different time zone here in Spain. It's midday, 12:30 here. And that's for various reasons, lots of stuff going on. It's my son's birthday today as well. But that's not the main reason. No, it just seemed to fit in well. And if you can join us, great. And if you're watching this in on demand later on, that's good as well. Welcome all those who are going to be, we've got quite a lot of people queuing up to ask questions and make comments, so that's good news as well. So welcome to the live stream. I'm just back from Singapore, kind of okay in terms of body clock and all that stuff, because you keep the European time zones really. It's a bizarre race in that respect. 11 o'clock in the morning, all the Formula One people are fast asleep, and then they also set the alarms for sort of midday and then walk to the track about 2. Looking bright and fresh, it's the beginning of the day, but of course by then half the day's over in Singapore, and the Singapore city, as I said a couple of times in my vids, is kind of out of sync with the Formula One life. And that sounds a bit of an arrogant thing to say. I mean, who's Formula One to say that Singapore should anyway adjust its time clock to Formula One? But they're going to have this huge race and it takes over the city, street race of course. You'd imagine there would be a little bit more ebb and flow in the direction of Formula One in terms of keeping restaurants open for longer and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, it was a big success again. Formula One looking amazing around Singapore, the cars looking amazing, the lighting, the track, everything, just an amazing accomplishment really. It's by far and away the biggest event that Singapore have all year. I was asking various taxi drivers to and from the airport what other big sports events they have, and they're all scratching their head along the lines of, well, we have a bit of cycling and cycling, wow, in that weather. And then they said, oh, the marathon is big, even more amazing, but football, not much going on. So Formula One is their big thing. Amazing. So that was that, and then we flew out, and here I am back in Spain. A few bits of news, a couple of sad bits of news. We lost Alan Rees recently, who very fast racing driver, never made it to Formula One in a real sense, but very quick in Formula 2. And without Alan, I don't think Winkelmann Racing, as used by Jochen Rindt to win innumerable Formula 2 races and with which to make his name almost, would have happened. Alan, very much an organizer and a very good racer, very good racing brain, as well as a quick driver. And then, of course, was the R of Arrows when Arrows Formula One started. He was absolutely instrumental in that with Jackie Oliver and Tony Southgate, Dave Wass. And I saw him relatively recently at some event at Silverstone, and he seemed fine, hadn't changed at all. Always, small guy, chunky guy, had a face that he never really looked very happy. I remember Mike Dudson, very... well, what's the right word to describe Mike Dudson? He's quite a cheeky journalist, I suppose, but very good wordsmith. Said that Alan, once memorably, I think he actually wrote this actually, he said, Alan Rees always looks as if, regardless of what's going on, always looks as if he just trodden in something nasty on the road, in the grass. That was his facial expression. But no, Alan was very much a part of Formula One for a long time, and we'll miss him a lot. Good man. And the other driver we lost was Rupert Keegan, who lived life. I mean, it's absolute cliche to say you live life to the full, but I mean, in Rupert's case, there's no other way to describe him, in my opinion. Quick driver, talented driver, no doubt about that. I mean, imagine, I used to think, imagine how good this guy would be if he sort of was quite disciplined about his life. But he loved life, he loved having a laugh, and he lived and raced in an era when you could have a laugh in Formula One. Famously once turning up at Zandvoort when he was driving for John Surtees, of all people, who doesn't think this was at all funny, when he'd overslept, obviously been up pretty late the night before, and in the rush to get to the track, was still in his pajamas, literally, when he got to the track in his road car. And I always remember Rupert, it was a British Grand Prix, definitely, and Rupert and Brands Hatch, and there was terrible traffic. And I remember chatting to Rupert. I said, did you have any trouble getting in this morning, Rupert? He said, oh, no, mate. No. I worked this out a long time ago. You just park on the hard shoulder of the I think it's the M20, which is the new motorway. And below, at one point, you just look down at Brands. This motorway went right past Brands. He said, just park on the hard shoulder there. And I know the car will get towed away. I'll just go straight to the police pound and pick it up after the race. No problem. It just ran down the bank straight to the track. I remember him, he was in a massive rush to leave after the race. And I said, I don't know if it was that race, it was another race, it was definitely Brands though. And I said, why are you in such a rush? What have you got to get back? He said, oh, I've got to get back. I want to watch a video of Bullet, the Steve McQueen thing. I've rented the video. And I remember thinking, well, the whole point of video is that we no longer have to rush back because we can press play whenever we want, and as distinct from live TV. So he's rushing back to watch a video of Bullet, the Steve McQueen. Yeah, well, that was Rupert. Great guy. I always felt that, there was this sort of gang of Adrian Reynard and Rupert and, those two really. And I was always amazed actually that Richard Branson never did more with those two, because it would have been just a perfect Virgin thing when Virgin was really open to being a proper sponsor, as distinct from the thing they did later on with that ridiculous budget cap deal. But at a time when Adrian Reynard was really good, Rupert was really good, and imagine if they had got that whole Virgin thing to go. Adrian actually moved to a place to live next to Richard, just to sort of encourage him to get into Formula One. Anyway, never happened, but we'll miss them as well, the Keegans, the brothers as well. Just and the last real contact I had with Rupert, he was doing something with the Turkish tourist board and trying to get me to go out some holiday in Turkey somewhere. And I seem to remember there's something to do with buried treasure in it too, something like that. But yeah, Rupert Keegan. So we miss him. Other news, Will Courtney. I have to say, never met him. I wish I had, because he's obviously a very talented guy. He's been at Red Bull for 20 years. Head of strategy. He was just about to join McLaren as sporting director. They've already got a racing director. Now he's a sporting director. Quite sure what the difference is. It's a whole interesting thing, that title, sporting director, because the British word for many years, and I don't think it sort of exists anymore, is team manager. So you'd have the team owner, which would be Ken Tyrrell, and then the team manager. Well, they didn't even have one at Tyrrell. It was Jackie Stewart, I suppose. But in my case, it was me. But the Italian translation of team manager is director sportivo. So then a lot of people started, oh, that sounds better, sporting director. So now we have sporting directors and we don't have team managers. But what's the difference between a sporting director and a racing director? It's all a bit over the top, all these different people. But I do think it's an interesting move, because those who closely follow my channel will know that I've been giving McLaren quite a hard time for dropping Lando in Q1 in Baku, when most people have just glibly said, well, he caught the yellow, bad luck or whatever. But my point is that he should never have been out there on the limit of the bubble to get into Q2 in the last millisecond of Q1, because all McLaren had to do was just get gently into Q2 with the best car in the race, not difficult. And I've made the point that they came in, they brought both drivers in, McLaren, 5 minutes to go before the end of Q1, not for new tyres. It can only have been for fuel, I can imagine. I'm still, no one, of course, McLaren will ever admit that, but it can only have been for fuel. And as a result, they went out literally with time to do just one lap to get into Q2 with 16 other cars on track on a street circuit, which is asking for trouble. And sure enough, by the law of averages, one of their cars did get a yellow, and it was Lando, and he didn't get into Q2. And at the same period, that 5 minutes to go, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari was out there with the McLarens, having got the same number of laps on his soft tyres, i.e. 5, and just stayed out there and did one more lap, got a pretty free lap, went up to P3, easily into Q2. And I don't know whether it's on the back of that McLaren now decided, well, we need to get a proper strategy guy in there to stop this sort of thing happening again, this nonsense happening again. I hope it is that, because it's just ridiculous. They basically lost that win, or at least a P2, for Lando Norris, purely because they brought him and Oscar in 5 minutes before the end of Q1. Absolutely ridiculous, as I've said several times. Anyway, this Will Courtney, Red Bull, good man, obviously, going to McLaren now. So that hopefully will tighten up a little bit on their organisation. Does that come under the heading of strategy, all that? I think there's probably too much strategy when they bring them in with 5 minutes to go. Oh yeah, if we run less fuel, we might get a really quick time, and then we can always bring them in 5 minutes to go, send them out, do one lap, very light fuel. I mean, we're talking Q1 here. We're not talking Q3. We're not talking, the defining grid positions. We're just talking getting the guy into Q2. Anyway, so whether or not a strategist has that view of life, I've no idea. I would hope so. But to me, I mean, if he's been there 20 years, he's probably got quite a practical view of life, which is a good thing, especially if he's a Red Bull guy. And because they are quite practical, relatively speaking, and that's a good thing. So more than anything, you just need to bring a touch of practicality to McLaren now and stop all this nonsense. And this, Lando gets through turn 1 at Monza, and then he gets gazumped by Oscar turn 2 when he's not even looking at the guy. And he's just focusing on trying to get a lead over Charles Leclerc. So lots to talk about. Speaking of Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, what does everybody think about how well he's been going? And then what happened in Singapore? What was that qualifying all about? I just don't get it. I mean, particularly for a driver who did what he did in Baku in Q1 and stayed out there. Obviously, the tyres were hot. Obviously, it was a sweat. And yet he managed to get a lap in and grafted away and got into Q2. And then he got a really good qualifying lap in. And then we almost won the race. Didn't, but, he was right up there fighting for it. Singapore, what was that qualifying all about? That Ferrari was a pretty quick car around Singapore, as we saw in the race. And yet, it looked to me as if Charles was getting in some sort of tangle and overcomplicating it by... There was no time to do two runs. Even if you had 2 new sets of softs at the end there, I think it was 7 minutes. There's no way in the world you could have got 2 laps. So all you could have done is gone out on the first set of softs, done 3/4 of the lap, aborted the lap, come in and then put on the other set and gone out. If you wanted to get a feel for the car, feel for the track. And that was pushing it. But he didn't even have 2 sets anyway. So I don't know what he was thinking. And he was late out and slow and tire temperatures. What a mess. For a guy that has just shown to the world how good he is at just putting in a lap, Q1 Baku, as I keep saying. I just don't get that. Disappointing, because Ferrari should have been right there in Singapore. And then you got Carlos having that shunt. It wasn't only Piastri he moved over for, it was 3 or 4 cars. Fair enough, he's a good guy, he's a sport, and he wouldn't hold anybody up, not in Q3. And he's going quite slowly and he just guns it with too much. But then again, I've always said that about Carlos. He does drive with the back end of the car, and that is his thing. Got to go, let's get on the throttle, slightly later apex, bang, go. And then that leaves very little margin for error. If you're more of a front end driver, typically not going to make so many mistakes like that. Speaking of which, I know I'm rambling on a bit, but I have actually looked at the only media people out there that, in my opinion, do a great job in terms of providing great images from races are Red Bull. And you'll notice I use quite a lot of Red Bull images in my videos. It's not because I'm biased towards Red Bull, it's just that they come up with the best stuff, and their site works really well. And because I don't know any other site that does this. Look at that. This is from Singapore. They're 2 drivers in exactly the same place. Probably within a lap of one another, I would say, given the light. And you never see that. Most other teams have, we got the car from that angle, we'll do a different angle, show the sponsors in different ways. Here's Red Bull doing something really interesting. Showing, I think, it's an interesting angle, I think that is the middle of the last corner. I think that's going from turn 18 to turn 19, that double apex. That's exactly where Carlos, if it is, I think that's exactly where Carlos lost the back end on his Q3 thing. And I've put that in because in the past I've done a few comparisons that Red Bull have put out, and it's been very clear, particularly Miami shots, of how Checo turns in a bit later than Max, and I've made that point, and we all know that he does that. But we also know that since the August break, he's actually been going pretty much like the old Checo, and he's improved in a couple of areas into corners, thanks to Rob Wilson. And I think that's a really interesting shot, because they're both on it. There's no doubt they're on it. If you look at the angle of the sidewall, you look at helmet angle, everything else, they're on it. And Max is a fraction further down the road, but not much. And look at that, it's almost identical. And I think that says 2 things. I think it says very good job by Sergio Perez right there. And I think the other point is, as I said in the video, to my eye, Max in Singapore was actually not going into the corner quite as early as he normally does. I think he was just on top of the tyres, wanted to get the lap in, and was braking a little bit more in a straight line and going a little bit wider, almost sort of. So that's where you see the overlap. You see Checo's got a little bit better in that area, and you see Max specifically at Singapore with the tire temperature issues and needing to get in that lap, that compromised lap he did in Q3. You saw him. I know that's medium tires, but he was definitely doing that most of the morning as well, and that's interesting. And I think that's in the race, and you can see there Max is virtually no different from Perez, or Perez no different from Max, whichever way you want to look at it. Really interesting comparison, I think. If you look at look at the SO logo on the front wing end plate, virtually the same. The distance of the right rear sidewall from the stripe curb there, virtually the same. Very impressive from Perez, and interesting to see Max doing that. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. What else? There's been a bit of drama about. No, we'll get onto it later on. I'm sure it will be. I've got an interview which I'm going to run. It's about half an hour as well in this live stream, which I hope you're going to really enjoy. It's with Yves Morisot, who founded and still owns Stand 21, one of the great racing safety equipment companies based in Dijon, France, but with branches all over the world now, and very successful over the years in terms of overalls, helmets, gloves. But also has since 2000 has had the license to produce hands collars for Formula One, and they've just done an outstanding job. They took hands seriously long before anyone in Formula One. It was Yves Morisot and basically Sid Watkins and Dr. Terry Trammell in America, and without those guys we wouldn't have the safety we have today. So I hope you're going to enjoy that. Yves is just he was one of the absolute heart and soul of French Formula One brilliance when it was absolutely dominant with Ligier, particularly Jacques Lafitte, Patrick Depailler, and so on. And wonderful times, Alain Prost, of course, Didier Pironi, and wonderful times. For me, often used to play tennis with them, and hang out at races, and just great guys all around. And Yves is just synonymous with me with the success of French motorsport and French Formula One. Lovely guy. So I hope you're going to enjoy that. We won't do that quite yet. We'll do some comments and questions initially. And the first is, let's see if we can get this to come up. The first is, greetings from India. Hello, AB. Peter, I saw your interview with Lewis 6 years ago. Why don't you do more such interviews with Lewis or Max or Charles? Talk about more driving in lines. Yeah, I will. I tell you why. Because these days it's such a rigmarole going through all the red tape you've got to go through to talk to these guys. And there's no point doing it in one of those communal 1,000 microphone interviews they do at racetracks with a million other journalists around. That's a complete waste of time. And so to do it, you got to get time with them, and all the Ferrari, Mercedes, they have the media, if you like, the media allocation of those drivers' lives is very, very small away from race meetings. So that basically there's no time to do it. I mean, I have the time, they don't have the time, and if they did, it would take 3 months of setting up, and to be honest, I just can't be bothered with all that. If I occasionally, on behalf of a sponsor, I'm in a position, or the exhibition or whatever, to talk to them because it's been set up by them, and I go in and do the interview, and that's great, and we have a good chat and everything works well. But yeah, I mean, it's if I WhatsApp Charles now and said, can I do a Zoom with you next week? Probably he'd say, well, I'm really busy Tuesday. Well, how about Wednesday, 7:00 or something? I'd probably get a response. Can't say that for sure, but I probably would. But then he'd say at the end, but just check with the media team. And then I'd check with the media team and say, oh no, Charles not doing any interviews, blah, 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 blah. As I say, I'm just, too old for all that. Can't be bothered with all that. And as I said I think was it the video I did? Well, I was chatting to Cameron after Singapore. It's when you start having to put in writing what questions you're going to ask them, it's just ridiculous. I feel like saying, well, if they've just gone well in the last race, I'm going to ask, this is going to be my opening question. If they've just had a terrible race, this is going to be my opening question. And if they then reply this, I'm going to ask why. How can you do these ridiculous pro forma questions in advance? Because the whole point of a conversation is to have a conversation. So, I don't know. I hope all that makes some sense. It's all a bit frustrating, but thanks for thanks for asking about it, and thanks for the comment about the thing. During the Singapore Grand Prix, George Russell was complaining about. I'm just going to make sure that this is coming up. There we go. No, it's not. Why am I not? 1 second. Just going to get this to come up again now. So I do that by doing that. I always have to go through this rigmarole, don't I, of getting this thing. Okay, now let's get this going. Why is that? I'm clicking on a question. It's not coming up. Let's have a look. Anyway, while I've been doing all that, super chats come up. Kevin Pryor, hello Kevin. Hello Peter. Do you think Verstappen will keep coming second in the last races? All because Ricciardo got fastest lap. That's not coming up either, is it? I don't know why. No, Max. You can't go around trying to finish second. You go into every race in Max's situation with a view to winning that race from the pole and winning it as simply and efficiently as possible. And if it works out after 5 laps that you haven't got the pace or the tyres are going off, then you finish in the best position you can. But you don't go into a weekend thinking, I'm only got to finish second here, get second in every race to win the championship. You can't think that way. Some people would, but it would be to their peril. You just go in and try and win every race. There's no doubt about that. So anyway, not doing very well here with this system, is it? I've got greetings from India, which is great. And now we've got doing this thing. Well, none of it's happening. I'm going to try and go back already. Anyway, I just had to read it out. Sorry about this. Hi, Peter. During the Singapore Grand Prix weekend, Russell was complaining about the tyre deg inconsistency. Do you think this is due to the Mercedes, these aero regs, or the Pirellis? Cheers. I think it's due to Mercedes' inability to get the best from the regulations. It's nothing to do with Pirelli. Because so long as there's one team out there doing a good job with the tyres, i.e. McLaren, nobody should be able to complain about the tyres. I think some teams approach tyre heating and tyre management in the garage differently from others. There's not much you can do in terms of the blankets, but I suppose you can within the tyre barrel, you can do different things. And some teams are getting more from the tyres, but it's not the fault of the tyre, it's not the fault of Pirelli. So George Russell or anybody that complains about the tyres is complaining about the wrong thing. They should be complaining about Mercedes' inability to get the best from the tyres. Sorry, that's the way it is. And if Mercedes are super sensitive to temperatures, then they're super sensitive to temperatures and they have to live with that and improve that situation. I'm slightly discombobulated because I can't get this ridiculous question, chat overlay thing to work now. It's just completely frozen. What if I press clear? What does that mean? I'll probably lose all your questions. I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm going to go up to... Okay, that's a super chat. Some very nice donations here. Thank you very much from Save Galoki. Thank you very much. And yeah, that's very kind. So I'm going to go to one that hasn't been shaded over, in the theory that it should come up. Now, every time I shade it now, it doesn't come up on screen. So I'm not quite sure what to do here really. Whether to start the whole live stream again, because what I know I'm going to have to do is put in a new key for this thing to refresh itself with. It's very annoying, isn't it? It's the wonders of modern technology. Normally it works really well, and the first one worked well, but now this one isn't. Okay, I'm just going to have to read them out, and then you'll know that that's not the question on screen. The next question is from Kunal Rao. Hi Peter, do you think McLaren's not being fully behind Lando says something about the contract that Oscar has, where he would be given priority over Lando if there was a chance for a win? No, I don't think that, and I don't think you can actually say McLaren are not behind Lando. I just think they haven't managed the situation very well. That's the point. And you don't have to be behind Lando to have the logic of saying at Monza, okay, first chicane, take it easy. And when you're out of the first chicane, whoever's in front, if it's McLaren 1-2, don't even think about a pass into the second chicane, because it's one of the most dangerous places to overtake. It's very narrow, very slippery offline. Doesn't take much to say that. Doesn't take much to say in Baku, no way we should bring those cars in 5 minutes before the end of Q1. Imagine if they're on the bubble and they come in and then we get a yellow or something in the last lap, which is pretty likely at Baku. That's just bad management that they're doing that sort of thing. It's nothing to do with favouring Oscar or favouring Lando. It's just poor management, and McLaren have been a victim of that for quite a long time. Now, from Lando's point of view, I think he would be expecting McLaren to have done a lot more to enable him to score the points that he potentially could have had by now, Hungary being a classic example. And we know that Lando was unsure about that, given the amount of time he spent on the radio, hesitating about whether he should give that win to Oscar Piastri. And if that's the case, then for sure it was marginal in his own mind. And so you're looking at what, 25 points. If you look at the gap now, 25 points would make a big difference, particularly as some of the races, there's 3 sprint races coming up as well. So there's quite a lot of points still out there. And if Lando was 25 points nearer to Max, it would definitely be putting more pressure on Red Bull and Max. And that they're not doing that. That's poor management from McLaren, very poor management. And yeah, maybe Will Courtney will change all that. I don't know, the new sporting director, but it's not a good thing. But it's not a conscious decision. We're not fully behind Lando. Of course, if you were to talk to anybody at McLaren, they say, yeah, of course we're fully behind Lando. How do you think he's got such a great car to win a race like Singapore? Of course we are. But that's what it looks like from the outside when you have poor management. And Oscar's super quick. That's the other point. It's a bit like Williams with Nelson Piquet and Nigel Mansell. Except that Nelson was the number 1 driver. He was contracted as the number 1 driver. But the only thing he never really thought of in advance was, what happens if Nigel's quicker than me? Because he never imagined Nigel would be quicker. And he was quicker. And that's where it became a mess. And I think Lando, to some extent, has fallen into that trap. He's not number 1 driver in the sense that anybody's a number 2. But I don't think he ever really thought, or possibly he thinks it's just demeaning for me as a racing driver to have to say to anybody, I want some effort behind me always to score the maximum number of points available. He probably thought, it's up to me as a driver and a human being to do that, knowing Lando. And the problem is Formula One is so complicated and there's so many factors and points are so difficult to get that in reality you do need the help of the team sometimes. So I think McLaren are behind him. I just think they're disorganised, and Lando could have maybe forced the issue a bit when he re-signed his long-term contract with McLaren. And I just think he was poorly advised there, probably. But wow, didn't he drive well in Singapore? Just superb, absolutely superb. And he made no mistakes in qualifying. Oscar Piastri did under pressure right at the end, and that's what won the Grand Prix effectively for Lando, because Oscar had been really quick in Q2, and yeah, just wonderful to watch. Really good. It's such a shame, he's lost all those points. Next question is Sarosh Soman. Hi Peter, I feel it's better to return to 1 lap qualifying from a safety point of view. I cringe whenever there's a slow car during a fast lap. Lots of things can go wrong. Your perspective? Well, of course, it's more cringeworthy in Q1 and possibly Q2 than it is in Q3 when you have 10 cars on track. But yeah, particularly on circuits like Jeddah, those super blind fast corners, speed differentials, I think is the worst thing you can have. That's why I'm not a great fan of Le Mans. And yeah, I back to 1 lap qualifying. I'd like it. I don't think they'll ever do it because everyone will say, oh no, it's too boring. No one else wants 1 car going around. It's too boring. It's not a quick fix. So it'll never happen. I just hope, like you, that nothing bad ever happens due to speed differential. And of course, this is what, it goes back to 82. This is what Gilles Villeneuve died talking about. There's the lunacy of speed differential in qualifying, exacerbated at that time by the rule of limiting of qualifying tyres being allowed, but you're only allowed 2 sets of qualifying tyres, which meant that there were a lot of cars out there going slowly, either having used their 2 sets or doing a mixed set or whatever it was, mixing the best from the 2 sets together. and too many cars on track, 26 cars in those days. And Gilles said, this is absolutely ridiculously dangerous, this rule. And of course, it was a slow car, Jochen Mass, that he hit when he went off and was killed. And we basically haven't got around that problem. It's much better now, obviously, with radio and GPS, and the teams are very disciplined now about telling their drivers the gaps to the driver behind. But it still happens. We've seen it happen. And occasionally there's this thing. Baku, usually there's a drama, isn't there? Fingers crossed, I think is about all you can say. Sarosh says, Peter, I feel that Leclerc is driving the Ferrari at a higher level than where it's supposed to be. Your thoughts, please. Absolutely love your show. No, I think he's... Yeah, I mean, I think on Friday I made the comment that he was just having to squeeze the Ferrari a little bit tighter to get the time out of it than the McLaren drivers were. And I think that's right. I think it definitely has a smaller sweet spot, particularly with the ability to manage the tyre temperatures. The McLaren have a broader base around which they can work. The Ferrari is a little bit smaller, but it's bigger than Mercedes and probably bigger than Red Bull right now as well. So it's not a bad car, the Ferrari, right now. It's not as good as the McLaren, but I'd say it's pretty near the Red Bull and ahead of the Mercedes. So, yeah, I just Charles should have been top 3 in Singapore, definitely, and I'm just quite sure what happened in qualifying. As I say, I think he just got very stressed out about the situation with 7 minutes to go and whether or not he should go out and come in and then do another lap, and the pit lane drama and tyre temperatures. It was too much time to think about it. I think that's what happened. It was all caused by Carlos anyway, so it was all a bit odd, isn't it, the whole thing? Adam McCarthy says, hi Peter, I'm a big WRC fan. Well, so am I, and as I speak I think it's the ceremonial start of the Rally of Chile, and maybe in half an hour it's going to start. I'll watch that on Rally TV, deferred of course, but yeah, can't wait for the Rally of Chile this weekend. What a spectacular set for that rally. Have you seen the pictures? The stage pictures, just gorgeous, and can't wait. I mean, really good entries from both Hyundai and from Toyota there. It's going to be really good. Can't wait to watch Martin Sess again and Ford as well. Super good. I'd be interested to see if he's as quick as Adrian Formeau. Probably is, I think. Anyway, your question, Adam, is I'm a big WRC fan. I'd love to see guys like Neville and Rovanperä in an F1 car, incredibly talented drivers. Well, they are. I'm going to go and watch Rovanperä doing some drifting soon as well. I think he's the #1 world champion drifter, isn't he, as well? And as for Terry, I wonder when Hyundai do that, the Genesis hypercar, which I think it's an off-the-shelf chassis, but they're doing the engine, aren't they? I wonder if that'll be about the point when Terry decides to go from rallying to racing and we see him in one of those. I bet he'd love to do that, and I bet he'd be super quick as well. What a driver. They're both amazing, absolutely amazing. Pratik Barol. Hi Peter, do you still do interviews with Formula 1 personnel? Do you publish them? Well, I chat to them a lot. I don't actually record them or publish them, no, because they know if something's going to be recorded and published, nobody says anything these days. And it's not just me saying that. I was talking to a lot of journalist colleagues in Singapore, and they all said the same thing. It's just, absolutely ridiculous now. And so the only way to get information is to be very casual and normal and do it on a friendship basis of people trusting one another. And not easy, but that's how I operate now. And I think that's the only way to do it. Interviews, formal interviews. As I say, the racetrack, they never say anything because they're totally under the control of the team. And I said, I was lined up to do something with one of the drivers. I wouldn't give his name away, in Singapore. It was with one of the sponsors, and they wanted the questions in advance. So one of my questions in advance, begrudgingly, was there's a lot of up and down performance, particularly from the midfield teams this year. How compare the car when you got the sweet spot right, and maybe when it's not so right. And it came back, oh no, you can't ask any questions about the sweet spot. You can't ask questions about that. So, if you can't talk about reality, what's the point of doing the interviews? Is my point. Pratik Barol, are you open to contact via email? I'd love to discuss something interesting, collaborations with you. Well, I kind of am, but I wouldn't want to give my email away now live on this show. So I think on the YouTube channel, it maybe has some email address in there, I think. I'm not being evasive, but I'm not quite sure how to handle this one. Pratik, let me think about how to do that. Yeah, just try and send it to any email address that comes up in the YouTube channel. I've got a management company that looks after my YouTube channel in that sense, the admin and so forth with YouTube. So it should be something there. But if not, I'll tell you what, ask the question again on the next live stream if you haven't found anything. And by then, hopefully I might have got some sort of way of giving you an email address to go to. Michael Lawless, Peter, which races will you be attending for the remainder of the year? I think Abu Dhabi. I was going to do Austin, but I'm not now. Something else has come up here in Spain. So, but I'm doing the Spanish, is it called the Madrid stages, I think it's called. Next weekend in Madrid, back to Madrid again to watch the that gravel stage rally in Madrid. At the moment, Abu Dhabi, I think, is the only one I'm doing at the end of the year, sadly. Oh, I shouldn't be saying that, sadly. Love Abu Dhabi. How's Afe? For anybody just joining and you're wondering why I've got this first question on the page, it's because I can't. Something's happened with this chat box thing, and it won't allow me to click and bring the next question up for some reason. So apologies for that. Hey Peter, hope you're doing well. I have a technical question on drivers and driving. Recently, Pirelli's Formula One heads said that on similar age tyres, Lewis, Max and Charles have far less deg than others in both qualifying and race trim. Yeah, and I'm just trying to find, yet by any metrics, they are the three fastest drivers on the grid. How is this even possible? It sounds against the laws of physics. How do they manage it? Well, at the risk of sounding glib and simple, the reality is the reason they are the fastest three drivers in Formula One is because of the way they are able to have the tyre sitting square to the surface of the road more than the other drivers on the grid. They create little areas when it's in the middle of a change of direction where the car's just got no load left or right, even though it's a left-right chicane. Or going into the corner, they extend the straight more. They're braking more with the car flat. They're not braking as much with load on the car. And it's all those things that use up tyre temperature or generate tyre temperature and thus deg. So it's no surprise to hear that. I've always said Lewis, Max and Charles are the three best guys in Formula One. I think Oscar's not far away. And so it's just good to have that confirmed. And we've had that through the ages. I mean, Dunlop were always amazed at Jim Clark's lack of degradation. Not that they used the word degradation on tyres back in the 60s, but Jimmy could use a set of tyres for sort of 3 consecutive races and win all 3 races. And other drivers, the wear would be less even over the tread surface. This is going back to the narrow Dunlop race tyre days. So it's no different, actually, from what Max or Lewis or Charles are doing right now. And so it's interesting, isn't it, Ferrari next year with those 2 guys. And whereas science, I would imagine, is using more of one part of the tyre than Charles does. Charles will be more even in the way he's got his loads distributed. So it's all about the distribution of load and still being super quick. And the reason they can be super quick is because they have so much touch and feel and suppleness that they can just sort of turn the wheel when others are thinking about straight line braking. They're turning the wheel, extending the straight, and they're going into a rotation point at the corner, which means quite a sharp rotation point relative maybe to the geometric apex. And it's quite a slow speed thing, but it doesn't matter because they gain so much speed with the extended straight in, and then they got the car rotated at exactly the right rate, and then they got a nice straight exit as well. And they're not wasting time with load, trying to get the load balanced against the throttle application. Short corners. A lot of people don't like me saying that, or indeed they have another drink when I say it. So there you go, there's the first drink of the evening or the morning or wherever you are. So yeah, good, thanks for that question, Hauser. Is a question from Distortion and Overdrive. Good evening, gents and ladies. Well, it's not, it's just a comment. Good evening to you. Lucas. Hey, Peter, do you think Lewis will ever win a championship again? I hope for the sake of the sport it does because of Abu Dhabi. Well, I'd love to see him get Abu Dhabi rescinded and win that 21 championship, actually. I think it was just a ridiculously bad decision at the wrong time. And it cost him the championship. And on top of that, he just driven maybe the best Grand Prix of his life to win that race. But anyway, that'll never happen, obviously. So it's not detracting from Max. I know Max had some great races as well, but that Abu Dhabi situation was absolute scandal, and still is, I think, in Formula One, and it hasn't been properly addressed even today. Do I think he'll ever win a championship again? I think if the Ferrari is a championship winning car, which is obviously the precursor to any answer, more likely Charles is going to be the world champion and not Lewis. More likely. I think Charles, if the car is a championship winning car, by which I mean if it's as good as, say, the Red Bull RB19 was, then Charles will be slightly quicker than Lewis, probably more than 50% of the time. Maybe not 60% of the time, but maybe 55% of the time. Lewis will definitely have his day, and he'll have his wins, and he'll go extremely well. But over a season, 23 race season or whatever it is, then I think Charles, it'll be very difficult for Lewis to beat Charles if they've got a championship winning car. If they don't have a championship winning car, you ain't going to win another championship. So 25, the Ferrari should be half reasonable, should be as good as it is now, if not a bit better, closer even to the McLarens than it is now. 26, who knows? Who knows? Maybe Adrian Newey's Aston Martin will be a second a lap quicker than every other car on the grid, in which case, bye-bye. Maybe Ferrari will be a second a lap quicker. Maybe they'll all be within a tenth. Maybe there'll be 10 teams all within a tenth. Who knows? Nobody knows. You know, new regs, new power units, everything else. So, yeah. Sarah says with a clapping thing, Peter with exclamation mark. Hi Sarah, nice to hear from you. OSG drivers, Warren. Hey, the Formula One's mine. Hey, from Switzerland. Hi there. Nick Lamoureux. Thoughts on what Ayo Komatsu has achieved at Haas since he took over as team principal. Sad to see Nico leave after such a strong season. Would love to see him and Ollie together instead of Ocon. Yeah. It's a lot of credit I think to Ayo Komatsu, but I think a lot of credit due finally to Dallara and the job they've done on that car, and they've always underplayed it. Haas and Dallara for that matter, because it's the Haas Formula One team and they own the intellectual property rights to the design and everything else. And they use a lot of Ferrari, obviously, technology on that car as well. But I'd like to give a shout out mainly to Dallara, and they do a very, very good job, Dallara. Aldo Costa is there, as you know, ex-Ferrari, ex-Mercedes, very good designer. And just in terms of carbon fiber research, over 100 people employed by Dallara. You know, not many Formula One teams would have a carbon fiber research department of that size. So that just shows how good Dallara are. So yeah, great job, I think, by Dallara. Very good job by Komatsu. No surprise. I mean, he's a logical, straightforward guy. Just gets on with it. Not interested in all the glitz and glamour or the Netflix. He just gets on with the racing, and that's proof positive that focusing on the real things, as distinct from the glossy things, is a much more beneficial way of living your life, racing life anyway. Michael Lawless, how Germany is not on the calendar really bothers me. Yeah, it bothers me too, and France for that matter, and Malaysia. Malaysia less so, but only because it's got such a great circuit, Sepang, which is sitting there growing weeds or whatever. But yeah, Germany should be on the calendar. The role played by Germany in motorsport since the turn of the 20th century, and France, where it all began anyway. You know, why haven't we got those two iconic nations, motor racing wise, on the calendar? It's an absolute scandal. It's all to do with money, of course, but you know, there is a time, I think there's a time when you have to put some matters of import in front of money. And the question is, do we want more money, and how much do we need, and what actually should we be doing? They're all different questions. What is appropriate? And so long as it is only about money, sadly, countries like Germany and France aren't going to be in Formula One, because it doesn't add up. I mean, Singapore's a great race, but as a race, it doesn't make money. It loses money. It's just that the city, Hong, whatever, can afford to take the loss, and there's a lot of business brought to Singapore and prestige and all the other stuff. But in terms of being a sports promoting event, a Grand Prix is almost impossible to make money from. You just have to justify it from tourism and other areas, and that's why in Germany, where they are much more pedantic about how you spend your money and what you do and profit and loss. That's why, it doesn't happen. Same with France. Sitivin, teams report inconsistent tyre performance. Is there a problem with quality assurance at Pirelli? No, there is not. There is not a problem with quality at Pirelli. In fact, I would say the similarity, if you take the medium compound tyres at any Grand Prix, the similarity between one set of mediums and another set of mediums is greater now. In other words, there's less difference than there's ever been in the history of Formula One. I mean, people complaining about it now should have been around in the days of Goodyear when teams had to measure the diameter of tyres, even though ostensibly they were all identical, and set the car up with stagger because no 4 tyres were ever going to be perfect in dimension. That's all gone away now with modern manufacturing technique. There's absolutely no issues with that. The problem is that they're not very easy tyres to understand. The teams don't have much knowledge from Pirelli because Pirelli don't need to have the knowledge to pass on because they're in a monopoly. And some teams are doing a much better job with the performance of their car than others. And the nearer you get to the ultimate performance, if there's as I keep saying, let's say there's a brick wall at the end of these regulations, which end at 2025, and some teams have hit that wall now, basically what you can do to make a car work within those regulations. There's not much more they can do now because there's no regulation changes for 25. They just got to keep pushing the envelope in tiny areas. Then McLaren are there, Red Bull were there, they bounced back a bit, they'll probably get back to the wall again pretty quickly. Mercedes, Ferrari sort of hover around it somewhere near the limit of what they can do. But the closer you get to that wall and to optimizing the performance of the car, the more all the other little differences in the variables will come into play. Put another way, if you're McLaren back in 2022 with massive porpoising to the point where the drivers can barely see what they're doing in a straight line, they're not going to be that concerned about whether this set of medium tyres, they got the temperatures right or not, and this temperature came in with this ambient and this wind came in a little bit faster than that. They're not going to be worried about those details. They're going to be worried about how to get rid of the porpoising. But now that some of these teams are somewhere near perfection, all those other little variables are much more noticeable. And McLaren by no means have it perfect. And McLaren have their own tyre temperature issues as well, as do Red Bull. But not as much as Ferrari and Mercedes right now. And that's what I talk about with sweet spot. It's also to do with the way you drive the cars. We were just talking about the tyre sitting squarely on the road. Guess whose tyres at Mercedes are more squarely on the road on a regular basis? Lewis Hamilton's, not George Russell's. It's not to say George isn't super, super quick and doesn't have his place where he is. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant, but he doesn't drive the same way as Lewis Hamilton. And it's the same at Ferrari. Charles is definitely more able to get more out of the tyres than Carlos Sainz because he's got the tyre sitting flatter on the road. So it's also about drivers, but it's not about Pirelli. Pirelli are doing, I think, a really good job. They're winning the race at the least possible speed. That's all you got to do if you're Pirelli. And what they need to make sure of is that there are no massive tyre blowouts or failures or all these things that could happen as they're in a monopoly, and that they're always on erring on the side of safety with tyres. Consistency, absolutely. But they have consistency. The production systems at Pirelli now make anything that Bridgestone had look pretty Stone Age. So there's no complaint about that. That's not a valid complaint. What is valid is that some teams are doing a much better job of getting the tyres to work than others. DB Cooper 1 asked maybe the best question I've ever been asked in the history of good questions. Back in the day, would you have ever bought a used car from Bernie? You know what? No, I think I was about to say, yeah, I might have. No, I think I'd say no. I mean, I've got to tell you, when I met Bernie in 70, I first met him in 72, sort of around March, April. I was working for David Phipps, very nice, very talented and professional photojournalist who had too much work, and he employed me as a ghostwriter to write the contracts he had, race reports and stuff, and press releases for various companies. It would all go out in David's name, but I wrote it all, and he concentrated on the photography, he and Nigel Snowden and Dinah Burnett. And one of David's contracts was with Bernie. He knew Bernie very well, going back to the 60s. And Bernie employed or had a contract with David, handshake, to write the press releases for Motor Racing Developments, the team he'd just bought, the company he just bought from Ron Tornack, better known as Brabham. And in those days, Brabham were not only in Formula One, but they were building Formula 2 and Formula 3 cars designed by Jeff Ferris. Nice cars, nice looking cars, not particularly strong, but nice cars. I say that because Carlos Reutemann had a left front hub fail going into turn 1 at Thruxton in the Formula 2 race, practice actually, in 72. Anyway, so my job was to go along to Bernie's place and interview the designer of the Formula 3, Formula 2 cars and write a press release about them on the basis that that press release would then get reproduced in Motoring News and Autosport and Motorsport, and details from it would be used, and potentially they would sell more cars, more racing cars. So I went there. Actually, Gordon was there as well. I mean, Gordon Murray had just sort of taken over the Formula One thing from Ron. He was there, but Jeff was there, and I remember talking to them about the details, and you'd say to an engineer, okay, track, wheelbase, weight distribution, what is the overall weight, length, and get all these details, and you talk to them a bit about the philosophy of the car. Anyway, I went there, and it was indeed a second-hand car showroom. It was sort of a bow-fronted building with second-hand cars, very nice second-hand cars in this bow front, and then the production race thing was at the back. This was not in Weybridge. This was somewhere in Erith, I think it was, somewhere on the M20 on the road towards Brands Hatch where Rupert Keegan did his getaway. And I did all this, and Bernie was in a front office near the car showroom, and I can't remember I don't think there was a sign or anything like that. It was just like this, it was a big bow-fronted building, but I don't think there was any sign, and Bernie's office was there, and Bernie was just the same as he is now, really, quite intimidating. You knock on the door, what you want, and it was all that. Anyway, I went away and I wrote the press release, and David went through it, and it's all typewriter, of course, and then once we'd got it done, then we'd do photocopies, and we had the Motor Racing Developments note paper, nice yellow thing, I remember, yellow logo. And I went back, and it was about 10 days later, and I went back and I had to get this press release that David and I had done with the photographs approved by Bernie. And so I went there, and to my utter astonishment, the place looked completely different. I wasn't even sure I was in the right building. All the second-hand cars had gone. There was furniture where all the second-hand cars were, and the title of and there was a big sign saying Scandinavian Furniture of Bond Street was the title of the building. Bernie's office was still there. Went in, Bernie was just the same. That happened in 2 weeks, 10 days. I don't know what all that means, really. But I tell you once, some bad things happened between me and Bernie, and I'll talk about them one day, I suppose. But some of the good things, under the heading of I'd never buy a second-hand car, but this is what I did do. At one point, I was talking to Bernie about, how did we get onto the subject? Anyway, we were on the subject of music, and I said, I really like Frank Sinatra. Because I grew up, my dad loved Frank Sinatra. He played in the jazz band in the war, Second World War, played the trumpet, and I grew up with Benny Goodman, Frank Sinatra, Glenn Miller. And I remember talking to Bernie, we got onto the subject of Frank Sinatra. And he said something, he's coming to London soon, isn't he? And I said, yeah, I think he is, actually. And I didn't really think much of it, because I was just this cub journalist riding around on the ex-Chris Craft Suzuki 250, staying in a bedsitter in Bromley. And I got a phone call one day from Bernie. He said, Peter, go to this address. And it was, it was some address in Edgware Road. And I went along there, and I went up this, it was a very narrow building, probably doesn't even exist anymore. Very scabby building, up sort of 3 flights of stairs, knocked on this door, very poor lighting and everything. This bloke opens the door, and he says, you Peter Windsor? I said, yeah. And he said, yeah, these are for you. And it was 2 tickets to Frank Sinatra at the Albert Hall. That was Bernie. Amazing. But would I have bought a second-hand car from him? I don't know. Probably not, because I wasn't very good at... I would have got Keith Green to go over it first, I think, or Herbie, to see if it was okay. It's probably what I would have done. Matt Alford Hi, Peter. Thanks for the continued content. Peter, do you think Robert Kubica was really good enough to have won a world championship? Such a shame his career was destroyed in that rally crash. Yeah, it was a shame. And you look at all the ERC rallies taking place today and on dangerous roads, very similar to the ones in which Robert had his accident, and, they get away with it. It's just such a shame. I do, yeah. I think winning a world championship is about being in a good car for a long period of time. It's not a car that's good for a couple of races or a car that's not very good and everybody else having bad luck. It's about being in a very good car for a long period of time and consistently scoring points and building them up and winning a championship. It's different from just winning a race, obviously. There's a lot of other factors involved. But whether Robert would ever have found himself in that position is debatable. But certainly the talent was there, had he been in that position, to have won a world championship, for sure. F1 Hensel, cheers Peter, greetings from Switzerland. Greetings to you too, thank you very much. Aaron Lee, Peter, you've said that Sainz being dropped by Ferrari is unnatural. What other decisions in the past in Formula One could also be described in the same way? Well, I've asked several people, and indeed in Singapore I was talking about it. I don't think there's a precedent for what Carlos Sainz is going through at the moment, because I can't think of a situation where the team has said to the driver at the start of the year, you're going to be sacked at the end of the year, but we're going to be 100% behind you and we want you to win Grand Prix for us. And the driver is put in that position, and he does win a Grand Prix for them, maybe win some more, and he's quick and he does a very good job. It's just a completely bizarre situation that I don't think he should ever have been put under. The nearest thing really, I guess, is Innes Island winning the 61 US Grand Prix for Lotus, the first Grand Prix win for Team Lotus, as distinct a Lotus car, because of course Sterling Moss had won Monaco in an 18, a Rob Walker privately entered Lotus 18 by then, but this was the first win for Team Lotus, the factory team, the 61 US Grand Prix. Innes Island drove really well, and literally the next day Colin Chapman fired him on the basis that he and Jim Clark didn't get on very well. He wanted Jimmy to be his new number one. He was going to put Trevor Taylor in the other car. That's about the nearest, but that happened at the end of the year. I'm not saying it was any more palatable for Innes, and you could argue it gave him much less time to get his career sorted, and he ended up driving BRP, didn't he? So it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't great. Had Chapman made that decision or told Innes in June, July, he might have ended up in a BRM or something, but or even a Ferrari. But that's about the nearest thing I can think of, actually, in terms of what Carlos Sainz has had to go through, still goes through. I think it's amazing he's doing as well as he is, and smiles and does the fan things, and he's there with Charles, and it was an interesting moment, wasn't it, when he crashed in Singapore, and there was, they hadn't got through to Q3, but there was Franco Colapinto doing a very good job in that Williams, right up there with Alex Albon. I wonder whether Williams are thinking, wow, shame we can't keep running Franco. As I said all along, the problem for Carlos Sainz going to Williams is Alex Albon. And I know at the moment you could say, well, Colapinto's managed taking it to Albon. But believe me, Alex Albon is not slow. And he will, over a season, he'll be very good. And the problem for Carlos is that unless he is consistently quicker than Alex, by which I mean 70% of the time, his stock is going to drop. Because right now he's a Ferrari Grand Prix winner, isn't he? And if he goes to Williams and he's sort of sometimes beats Alex Albon, sometimes he doesn't, it's difficult. That's why I'm still amazed that he did that. I'm amazed he's done that Williams deal. I know in the short term he thinks, it's probably quite a good car, probably getting the points, maybe get a P3 if I really do well, wouldn't it be great? I still think he should have taken an Audi deal and just put his whole future with Audi, brand ambassador, 25-year contract, win, lose or draw, depending on how good the car is. At least he's with a brand and he's with a proper manufacturer, and that's going to look after him, and he's earned that position, if you like. That's about the only option he could have had, in my opinion, and I think that's what he should have done. Nico Hülkenberg and the other car, very good team. DB Cooper 1, when talking about Andretti, why do you always blame the FIA and not the teams who are the ones opposed to it? FIA has power, but only Formula One teams agree. All I've said is that I think trying to go to Liberty in the United States with Jim Jordan is not necessarily going to produce results, because the problem lies with the FIA and the teams. I think you've possibly misunderstood what I say there. Of course, the issue is the teams, and it's the teams and the FIA together. Well, it's the FIA endorsing what the teams want to do, as you correctly say, which is what I've always said. All I've said is it's not Liberty, it's the teams. And that's the point. And of course, the teams, as I say, don't want, if possible, they want, if a new team's coming in, they want them to buy an existing one so that they all make money, and it puts the prices up in Formula One. And if they want to sell down the road, it's more money. And then it keeps the size of the cake the same size, and the proportions are the same. What they don't want is a new team coming in and making the cake smaller. That's what they don't want, because it's a double whammy. A, it makes the cake smaller, and B, it means that there's a precedent now for new teams not buying one of the existing ones. So that's what I've always said. Zoku, hi Peter from Ireland. I've seen an interview that Colapinto's father sold their house there just so he could afford to drive in Formula 4. It's incredible. Have you heard any other similar stories like this? Well, not only that. I mean, Jaime Campbell-Walter, his manager, had made a home for Franco over the last 6 years, sleeping in his living room floor and just, giving him the opportunity to go racing. And yeah, he's a great guy, a lot of talent, and just justifying everything he's doing, isn't he? Just brilliant to watch. And it's a great story, great to see. I mean, from my point of view, obviously Nigel Mansell is very similar, because, Nigel, more so really, because when I met Nigel, it was 1978, and he'd just remortgaged the house that he and Roseanne had got a mortgage on at their first home in Hall Green, Birmingham. And the money they had, they gave to March for Nigel to do, and it was enough to do 5 rounds of the British Formula 3 Championship, the first 5 rounds. And after that, there was no more racing, unless Nigel went so well that March either decided to run him find the budget of their own, or he got a sponsor or something. But it was very clear he only had these 5 races. And I met him in race 1 and followed him to the remaining 4. And on every occasion, he did something brilliant, whether he was in qualifying or the wet or a recovery drive. He was just beautiful to watch. Very early turn in, lovely, smooth, soft edges to his driving. Everything was, really nice. And to me, it was very clear how good this guy was. And yet the money ran out. March put somebody else in the car, and he did not race again that year. It's 1978, and he only did 5 races. The rest of the year, I was with him quite a lot. We were up in his house in Hall Green. He converted the garage into a sort of gym, which was a punch bag and a pair of army boots, basically, and some boxing gloves. And he'd go running every day, and I'd write letters, and we'd send them off to sponsors. And luckily, David Price, bless him, offered Nigel a drive for 79 in the Unipart Formula 3 car. This number 2 drive, terrible Dolomite engines, very, very slow alongside the Toyota engines, but it was a drive. And he was in a racing car. That's the only way you could look at it. The alternative was nothing at all. He'd had 8 months of no driving. So Franco Colapinto, I don't think, has had 8 months of not driving a racing car in the way that Nigel did. But it was those moments, those 8 months, and then having to prove himself in the Unipart March alongside Brett Riley, the number 1 driver, who always got the better engines, and all those really tough things he had to do that put him in such a resilient mode that when he got on the edge of Formula One and he was given an opportunity, the big point, if you like, he played it beautifully, because compared with what he'd gone through in 78, not driving at all, having to go out in a Formula One Lotus with 3 minutes to go and try and qualify it without hitting anything, that was easy. No problem there. Used to that. And there's a lot to be said for all that. I'm not saying that I recommend going without racing for 8 months, but that's what Nigel Mansell had to do. Peter, I told you before, it's Charles Leclerc. The C is silent. Sarah. No, well, Sarah, you're completely wrong. Sorry, I can only say this in a nice way, but I established this with Charles face-to-face long ago when he was still in Formula 3. How do I pronounce your name, Charles? He said, it's Charles Leclerc. He said, do not forget the C. So I'm sorry. He may well have changed it, but then, you know, that's too late for me. That's what he told me. So that's what I'm going to live with. In the same way that Luca Montezemolo was always called Luca Montezemolo, the Ferrari boss. And then somewhere along the line, it was Luca de Montezemolo, and everybody started calling him Luca de Montezemolo. And I remember interviewing him in the early 2000s. Was I interviewing? I was just chatting, I think. I said, Luca, what's all this de Montezemolo business? And he said, I know why people say this. It's Luca Montezemolo, he said to me. So I passed that on as well as free information. Charles Leclerc and Luca Montezemolo. Okay. Actually, ALV says, agree with me. No, Sarah. Usually in French, the C would be silent, but Charles has clarified that you do pronounce the C or K. And he has. And, you know, you've got to respect what they want to do, really, in the way they want their name pronounced. And I think there's some confusion as well. Maybe, Sarah, you're a massive Michel Leclerc fan, maybe, and a very similar name, different spelling. That's ended E-R-E. And of course, he drove for Frank Williams and very quick Formula 3 driver, French Formula 3 driver, like Charles, except Charles was Monegasque, of course. So yeah, that was Michel Leclerc, and it's maybe that's why Charles wants it Leclerc, because he doesn't want to be confused with Leclerc, who, let's face it, didn't have a great Grand Prix career in the Williams Wolf. In what was it, 70? I'm guessing 76. Yeah, the ex-Harvey Postlethwaite Hesketh 308C chassis, painted dark blue. Alex M. Ferrari. I'm clicking these as if it's going through. I know it's not. I know you're still looking at that one question. I'm really sorry about that. Alex M. Ferrari and McLaren's strategic game isn't quite matching the speed of their cars and drivers. Red Bull chasing Mercedes from 2012 to 21. Got the best strategy game in the pit lane. It's disappointing. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I kind of see what you're saying. I just think McLaren's management has been very poor recently. Ferrari, a bit too emotional sometimes on the Charles side of things, and I just wish Carlos was a little bit more orientated towards the front axle. And Mercedes, stop moaning about the Pirellis and get on with it, would be my thing. Nobody's asking about talking about the Lewis decision to start on softs. Because apparently he did some soundbite somewhere. Typical, this is where soundbites are so misleading. And he said, oh, well, yeah, it wasn't my decision. But of course, what that really means in saying that is it wasn't my decision, it was a team decision. And of course, Lewis may well have said, well, I don't agree with this. I think this is crazy. But if you guys want to go along with it, we'll do it. We live and die as a team, as he always says. That's what that's all about. And because I can tell you now, if Lewis did not want to start on those soft tyres, absolutely categorically, there is no way they would have started them on the soft tyres. There's no way, if the driver said, I do not want to race those soft tyres, do not talk to me about it, there's no way they would keep pushing it, particularly if it's a marginal decision. And so, you know, I think that's, this is a quote actually from after the race. It's hard to describe the range of emotions you feel when we have a difficult race. This year continues to be a testing one for everyone, but we're all pushing as hard as we can. We don't always get things right, and that was the case today with our strategy. We all head into the weekend, and every decision we take with the right intentions, and sometimes it doesn't work out. It can be frustrating. We're all in this together. Well, exactly, and that is the right attitude to have. The question is why it was even an option on the table in the first place. That's what I don't get, and it's a moot point whether Lewis suggested it to the team and the team endorsed it, or the team suggested it to Lewis and Lewis endorsed it. The point is they did it. And why? Only, in my opinion, to get an advantage off the line in a relatively short run into turn one in Singapore. And if you haven't passed two of the most difficult guys in racing to overtake, well, certainly Max Verstappen. I mean, okay, Lando, maybe he's slightly easier to pass, but he is on the pole in a McLaren, which is a very good car with no problems with tyre temperatures. If he hasn't got both of those, then the whole point of running softs is out the window. It's a big ask. And to his Lewis's credit, he was there alongside Max going in, wasn't he? But he's on the wrong side. He was on the right instead of the left, and that was it. End of story. Wrong tyre choice. Why did they do that? I mean, I think they just got carried away with how they'd locked out the second row. Mercedes are back. But they weren't back. And it was a very, very odd Q3 with just a 1 lap burst at the end on a track evolution that was flattening out, wasn't getting any quicker. No chance to make a mistake. And the 2 guys that got the front row were both put in compromise laps, which didn't reflect exactly how quick their cars were. And Lewis did a great compromise lap as well. And that was the problem. They misread that situation, I think. They probably thought, oh, we're right up there now. We've got to do something. Give us the unfair advantage. What a mistake. What a mistake. Lewis could have been right up there. Anyway, so I've said that before anybody preempts it now. Sarah says, show me where he said that. Well, I can't show you because he said it to me in the back of the Prema motorhome at Monza. There you go. I can tell you where. When he was driving for Prema. And it was called Prema Power Sports, I think. Yeah. Hi, Peter. Savage Lucky. Hi, Peter. With tracks increasing and changing every year, do you think they'll take out the legendary ones like Silverstone and Monza, replaced with new ones? All I can say is I hope not. I hope not. I wish they'd listen to me and do what I tell them to do, which is start building the classic circuits in the deserts of the Middle East or the deserts of Arizona. And so it would give us a Nordschleife and a Spa and a Brands Hatch and a Sepang in those tracks, in those places, with modern safety facilities everywhere. That would solve the problem, wouldn't it? But money talks. Money talks in so many different dimensions now. It's a bit scary what potentially could happen, I think, with Formula One. I hope those great circuits never go, but you just never know. Never take anything for granted these days in terms of what might happen next in Formula One. So yeah. Pratik Barol. I'd like to get a lesson or two from Rob Wilson. Do you know how I can contact him? Well, he won't appreciate it if I give his mobile number out on the thing live either. But if you phone around, well, let me think. I'll have to come up with some email, won't I? Where everybody can talk to me behind the scenes, as it were. I'll try and do that in the next one. But Rob, yeah, I mean, he doesn't charge much for his services. What you'd be paying for is the rental of the track, the car, tyres, tyres, and then enjoy. Yeah, and he'll definitely, if you're doing any club racing or whatever, you'll find half a second, if not 7/10, I would have thought. And if you are Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1 level, it'd be impossible to leave a day with Rob without finding a 10th, I wouldn't have thought. And multiply 10th over a 62-lap race, and you see what I'm talking about. Kevin Pryor, hello everyone. Great win for Lando. Yeah, it was a great win for Lando. Anyway, they're going on about the Leclerc thing. So it is Leclerc and Michel Leclerc. Alex M says, Peter, I miss your interviews walking around the pit lane during the Speed TV days. Some fun moments there. Yeah, there were. They're really good. I'm not sure it'll be as fun today because, as I say, all these, they're all conditioned to say nothing and do nothing. But even then, you can have quite a lot of fun with the driver saying nothing. I could anyway. I'm not sure how they do it today, but I think I could have a lot of fun with a driver who didn't want to talk. I think we could still have a lot of fun, if you see what I mean. So that was the Kevin Pryor thing. Michael Lawler says, Speed TV was one of the best there ever was. I missed that whole team. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I did too. Larry Holm and then Frank Wilson and obviously Bob Varsha, Steve, David Hobbs. Yeah, we had the best thing with the end of season dinners we used to have at some David Hobbs chosen steakhouse somewhere, which were really good. But yeah, we had a lot of banter and a lot of fun times. Shame, isn't it? Doesn't really happen anymore. Savage Lucky says, hi Peter, Stefano Domenicali has made a comment about V10s coming back. Do you think it's possible in 2030? Hope so. Love to see very noisy V10s back in Formula One. Wouldn't it be great? I'm not sure he's allowed to say things like that, is he? Does he mean normally aspirated V10s or does he mean electrified V10s? I don't know. So okay, well, there we go. Next one. I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. I'm going to put on the interview I did with Yves Morozona. Don't go away because he's the essence of French motorsport. He's the essence of passion about racing, and he's the essence of caring about safety and contributing something in a fairly low-key way that I think has given him nothing like enough recognition for what he's done over the years. And I kick myself for not having spent a bit more time with Yves over the years. I think he's one of the great pioneers of racing safety and motor racing in general. I mean, very close to Alain Prost and to Jacques Lafitte over the years. I did a golf course project with them for a long time in Manicourt. Very, very nice guy. And as I say, since 2000, Stan 21, I've had the license to produce the Hans collar. And now I think every Formula One driver uses the Featherlight Stan 21 Hans collar. Biggest, they sell more in the world. I think they've got 15,000 they sell throughout the year now, obviously to racers around the world. And I don't know how many lives they've saved. Your guess is as good as mine, but it's a lot. And injuries as well, of course, because that vertical, injury was just horrendous. And Yves talks about that and the genesis of the Hans collar, which is to me right up there with whatever, helmets, seat belts, carbon chassis, as one of the great safety innovations of our time. So Yves Morisot, lovely guy, and there's a lovely little twist at the end of the interview, so stay with it, about who his new partner is. It's almost like full circle, if you like, partner in life, that is. So here we go, Yves Morisot.
The company now is about, who I will tell, more 200 people around the world. We have a factory here in Dijon with 49 employees, not 50 because the union, and we have one other factory, in India with about it's our factory. It's not a subsidiary. No, it's our factory in India.
Whereabouts in India?
In Madras, Chennai.
Nice.
Chennai is the capital of the sewing in the world. One of the capital in the world.
Yeah.
Because the fabric from Madras was known in the 14th, 15th century. A long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I'm still now after the COVID, I decided to retire because I was tired. And Romain was working with me 20 years. And Christopher was working with me about 10 years. And
they're your two sons?
Yeah, my two sons, yes.
Yes.
And I didn't want to sell to the banks, like all my competitors did, I have a lot of opportunity to sell for a lot of money. But money is not the most important thing for me in my life, Most important thing is the relationship. That's why in 5 weeks, I was making a lot of things in America. I'm living part-time in America, in California, close to south of Los Angeles, Newport Beach. And over there, I have a lot of friends, racing friends. And the beginning of the month, I was in Bonneville for the Salt Lake, because I bring there a lot of things in the safety.
Yes.
And for them, I'm a hero. And the quarter miles marker are almost stand 21.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, and I was there with a friend of mine, not a friend of mine from who write book in France, write some book in France, and one the guy from Los Angeles who make a short movie on my life, on the Stand 21 life. Not me. I'm nobody, but for a lot of people, I was in the beginning of the safety in racing. And
you were, and you are Stan 21 for many people. Tell me, just before we go any further, Stan 21, the name, where did it come from?
And when I started a small car accessory shop in Dijon, I think I have to find a name who is really in racing because I was loving racing. And I chose Stand because for French people, Stand is a place, but it's not the right name in English. Because it stands for us is a garage, pit stop.
Yes.
That's this name. And 21 is the area code.
Okay.
Okay, cool. That's why. Very simple. But it was a good idea because the name is neutral.
Yeah. No, it's very good. Tell me, today, everybody non-English calls the pits the boxes.
Yeah.
Is that the same in France now? Is that replaced stand, or is stand still the word?
No, we still use the name stand.
Do you?
You
Good.
know, and because
Nice.
we say you stand number 1, 2, 3, 5, etc. If you're Le Mans, the people will tell you stand.
Good.
But true is now in racing, it's more and more people who speak English. Okay, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, everybody was speaking English and French.
Yeah.
Because FIA Balestre and FIA was in Paris at this time. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, before to move to Switzerland, and but before it was every time French and English, and now it's more in English. And you know, it's okay for me. You know, I'm really not. I'm happy. It's easier to communicate around the world.
Eve, those look like two Ayrton Senna helmets behind you and an Alan Prost helmet, I think.
Yeah. But he's not a real Ayrton. It's Ayrton who gave me, but he's not. He was not wearing this one.
But he worked with you though, eh? He loves stand 21.
Sure. Yeah. And you have also Akinen, real one. Danny Sullivan.
You need to move the camera a little bit up. We can't see the Hakkinen. Oh, okay, yeah, got it. Yep.
And Oriol on the top, on the Raikkonen. But after, in my room, look at I have everywhere. Look at all the place over there is racing suits from a driver. I have about 200 real racing suits from Formula One driver, Formula, all these people. You know,
wonderfully.
Nice story, you know.
And you're in Dijon. That's in Dijon where you are now?
Yeah.
So many things to ask you about. We don't have that much time, obviously, but your life has been really centered around safety and motorsport, and enormous contributions with overalls, boots, gloves, obviously helmets.
Yeah, and hands.
And the hands collar too, which in terms of racing drivers today is an enormous contribution you have made to safety for them, even as we speak today and going into the future. Can you give us a little bit of an outline to the hands collar story from your perspective?
I think it's easy. Hans, you know, in 83, it was a driver, Jim Downing, was racing in Mid-Ohio, and I was 2 weeks ago at the gym home in Atlanta. We are very close, you know. I will explain you later for what.
Right.
Why. And he was, and one guy, a French guy, Patrick Jacquemin, who was racing with Renault, was killed in a crash accident with a basic skull fracture. Okay? And Jim was very shocked. And he said, what can we do? One guy who was working on his car was his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law was a biomechanician from General Motors, who was working. His name was Bob Hubart. He was working on dummies in the 70s to test with the crash test. You know, the crash test. It was the first dummies in crash tests around the world.
Okay.
And Jim told to Bob, do you imagine what happened and I can be killed like that? And they were thinking together, and he found the idea to make a collar. I have here. I will show you the first one. Okay, and it was the first Hans in 1986, 87, and they put a patent on this on that, and they get the patent. And in 80, and they were starting. I have all the collection. If one day you come, you will see this one is 86. I have the 88. I have the 90. I have I have everything. And in racing in the USA, they're starting to work. He was the two very well-known doctor, Dr. Terry Trammell,
Yep.
okay, and Dr. Steve Olvey, who were working for IndyCar, and they knew the problem of the classical skull fracture. They were both part of the FIA. And they're starting to see in a crash in IndyCar and in NASCAR that they have a lot of case of basic skull fracture. Because nobody can keep his hand in case of crash.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when you have the belt, your body go down like that and it go up like that, and the basic skull fracture at 40 miles per hour, you are dead. Front crash at 40 miles per hour, you are dead. And they're starting to discover more and more and more, and they're starting to push with ACMS. ACMS is the medical member in America with some people from FIA, but it's more American medicine. They're starting to think more and more and more. And it was the beginning of in 94, 95, it was the beginning of some people who were racing with this one. And happened in IndyCar, happened a crash, Greg Moore crash. And I was there, and Greg Moore was killed with that. And they're starting to say, oh, we have to put mandatory to everybody. And in 2001, arrived the crash Dale Earnhardt in NASCAR.
Mm.
Okay, Dale Earnhardt, and before they were selling 20 hands per year, and suddenly they received 50 orders in 1 week. And they cannot produce. And at the beginning, it was not in Formula One. And after the Ratzenberger crash, and Ayrton, a little, the head was too far, you know, and if the head was keeping on a shoulder, it should be different. The crash would be not the same. And what Kings and people were thinking, we will do something to keep the head. And they were working they were looking around the world what was the patent. They knew absolutely the airbags, but airbag doesn't work in Formula One or racing. It's more dangerous that it's okay.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, why we don't work with this American patent? And to develop the standard, they asked Mercedes to develop the test. And one of the engineers of the test of Mercedes, when he discovered the hands, came to Atlanta for several months, and they were working over there on how it was working and what tests they will do. And it was the beginning of story, but it was already mandatory in Formula, in NASCAR, in IndyCar, and a lot of people starting to wear also in IMSA. We pay for the development, we pay for the test, but we need 3 producers around the world. One was American one, okay, is Jim Downing. One, they give the other one to Schrott, okay, Schrott is a German company. And the third one they give to me because I was the only one company who were showing up in a medical meetings,
taking the trouble to do so.
Exactly. And they said, okay, and he knew my products, he knew my image, he was wearing my helmets, and he said, okay, I want to work with you. If you want, we can give you the license. I said, okay, took the license. And I took the license 2002, but never signed any contract between 2004. And immediately, Dr. Watkins asked me to make a meeting in Birmingham for the Birmingham show. And I organized a Birmingham meeting over there, sending 400 with Agnès Carlier, sending more to 400 invitations around the world, you know, to make the plantation. Jim Downing was there, Terry Trammell was there, Sid Watkins was there, Bob Hubbard was there. And you know how many people show up? 4.
Oof. Terrible.
People
just didn't care, did they, about safety?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Sid was very happy that what the fact that now is possible in Europe. He asked for or some test 2 weeks later in Barcelona. And we came to Barcelona, and 90% of the Ferrari drivers said, no, we don't want to wear, we don't want to wear, we don't want to wear. What's the name? And Sid tell, okay, you don't wear, you don't race. Okay. And everybody was wearing it. It was the time when the sliding tether was not moving like that. You know, we invented the sliding tether.
Ah, so the driver could move his head a bit, yeah.
Yes. Okay, it helped a lot. And in 2000, it was in 2003, I think, Alonso get a big crash in Brazil.
Yeah.
And he came out of the car and said, oh, shit. My hands was working very well. I feel that he keep my head. Otherwise, I didn't know if I will be here.
Wow.
And after it was, nobody was complaining later. And after we're starting to make the production in France, in Duquesne, in Lyon, because in America, everything was costing very expensive. The mold were expensive, the piece were very expensive. And we moved all the production from America to Lyon. We decided to make 11 size to be sure that everybody will have this size and angle and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And we were in a very short time, in 1 year, we come from nothing to 3,000 hands per year. And after 5,000, 7,000, after when we have enough, we're starting to build molds for mold pressure, like a carbon on plastic carbon. You know, it came from the price came from $1,000 to $400. And 400 euros, excuse me. But 400 euros, nobody have an excuse to don't wear. Yeah. And I push after, my big problem was to push the other series to wear. Because a lot of them said, oh, we don't need, we are not in Formula One. I said, yes, but you will. And they put, and I remember in 2004 or 5, 1 or 2 drivers want to wear in Le Mans, and they refused the driver to wear at Le Mans. Imagine if something happened. This one day, one lawyer will come against you. What you will do? Say, oh, shit. Okay. And they let, at the last minute, they said, okay, you do what you want. And after it was, my problem was to push in all series was very tough. One of the most difficult was inland. Because inland, for the people, safety is not the most important in racing. But in the club racing. After, Germany was easy. France was difficult. And imagine the first, at the beginning, they're starting to put mandatory in Paris-Dakar, in Dakar, 2009. Before, said, no, we don't have to wear. The problem in safety, when you don't put something mandatory, nobody will wear.
Nobody will do it, yeah.
No, because they don't think they will get a crash.
And then they have a crash, or they see a crash, and then it all changes. Yeah. Tell me, in rallying, it looks like they have a cross thing across the chest and the back for the attachment.
Sometimes they were wearing that. It's another product. It's a copy of the hands.
Yeah.
But it's a lot heavier. And it's a big problem. They don't have the same result in a test. Because to be good, you have to be very tight, very tight. Otherwise, they give you room to your head. And it's a FIA, let this product going, do that, just to have a competition. And in rally, they think, rally people are every time different. They think it's easier to come out of the car and come in the car. But it's not true. But after, it's more difficult to fix. You have to, and we have already problem in Dakar. With these things, they get problem with vertebral back when they arrive like that. It's not good for the back.
But you, Stand 21, don't make those. You just do the correct.
No, I don't want. Yeah,
the classic one.
Yeah.
And
I was ready to buy all the factory.
Yeah.
Everything. In 2009, the American people were so happy with my job, and we were so close. They said, okay, now we want to retire. We want to make our money. And I was ready to buy, and it was exactly when arrived the subprime time, and the bank, who were very happy to help me in 2008, July 2008, they said me no in November 2008. Not no, but it was a mess, and I stopped. But I was ready because I was already make all the authorization and documents from America, banks, etc.
So Yves, today it's a really interesting situation, isn't it? Because you've got all the big money companies providing overalls, helmets, boots, shoes, and everything in Formula One, but they all use the Stand 21 Hans collar, right?
Yeah, because we are first. We never stop to develop.
Yeah.
Okay, and you know, for the suits, gloves, etc., everybody was wearing my equipment in the 80s, but everybody was paying a part. Today, nobody pay. We do a different job.
Yeah.
And for the hands today, we produce hands with very technical, very light, and nobody want to take this. Plus, it's a patent, you know, like that.
And it's really, really important part of the whole safety package.
My company is 1970. Simpson 1967, 3 years, but just in America. Sparco was 1975, and OMP 1977. And I was in the business before them, but no, the Nomex in 1972-3, it was just one color or two color or three color.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the problem of the suits, you know, the people are working on a sizing, on a look, etc. But they don't work something. What is very important is the breathability of the suits. I bring with Ayrton and with Alain. It's like if you run with a nylon shirt on a back, or a cotton t-shirt.
Yeah.
If you were to look at you wear a cotton t-shirt.
Cotton t-shirt, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to wear nylon.
No.
But the people are wearing something like nylon because to get the fire, they have to close the product to be fired. Helmets today are nothing to compare to before. They are a lot better. But in the same time, to be better, they are closer to the head. And the problem of helmets, 90% of helmets today, the people that buy helmets is not on the right size. And otherwise, we have to fix helmets like a suit, has to be close to make, perfect, like made to measure, because it has to be close to your cheek, has to be close to your head, because in case of crash, otherwise you will move, you will go on this way or this way. And all the racing around the world now, what is growing very, very fast now is all sorts of racing. Endurance racing is growing. But you know, also I'm in my business, I am very well known in drag racing, because we produce because they have deaths in 2007, 2008, and they call me to say, can you do something for us? And I came it was at this time just Simpson and Impact, and they were asking me, can you help us? And we developed a full line of suits and gloves and shoes, because they have a lot of fire over there.
Good for you.
And it's, you know how many people race in drag racing in America?
No idea.
More 200,000.
Tell me, in the world of NASA and development for the future, is there still much development on Nomex, or are they looking at completely new materials now? No. What is the future for that?
Well, I think now we are at the maximum we can do.
Yeah.
No, because now we have a 13-second test. And after, if we go over the 13-second test, it's sickness. And you know, everybody was thinking in a certain time it will be carbon, because carbon is not fire, but it's a heat transmitter. If you put a flame on a carbon, on the other side, it's immediately red.
Okay, yeah.
But you are not you're not burned by the flame, but you are burned by the other side. You need to be protected in fire. You need, like I was doing at this time, sickness. You know, you need 2 or 3 layers. It's the best. You know, when we do the suits for the drag racing, 7 layers. 7 layers.
Wow. I wonder what Nelson Piquet would think of that, because he didn't really like to wear underwear, let alone two-layer overalls.
Nelson, one day, he was asking me, make me a suit, one-layer suit for the Brazilian Grand Prix. I said, no. I said, why no? I said, no, because I don't want. You have to wear a suit. And don't forget, from 1970 to 1987, it was no FIA standard.
Well, they all wore T-shirts, didn't they, under the overalls? For
Yeah. No, but it was no standard. You buy suits, you have a suit, you have no standard. Okay, that's me. I bring with Jan Brown. We make the standard in 86, and it was starting to be more 87. But before, the standard was my face. The guy said, oh, shoot, I know Stand 21 is making good products, and we will buy this one. That's why we will have, It's completely different compared to today. Today, you have standards, but a lot of people copy around the world. It's sometimes a big mess.
Yves, you've never sold out to the big companies. I guess you're very happy now to have your family company like this, your two sons and the future and everything you've done.
Absolutely. That's a big reward for me, because, I'm not rich, but I have enough money to have a good life. It's not because I will have one more Ferrari or one more. No, I have a beautiful life. I have a beautiful home here. Tonight I have a friend of mine who will have a dinner, Jean-Louis Schlesser. Maybe remember Jean-Louis?
Of course. Please say hi to him. What a great guy.
Yeah, he will be there at 6 p.m.
And I think can I ask you this? I think you have a very nice partner in your life now as well, eh?
2 years ago, I was in Retromobile, Paris.
Yes.
With Bernard Asset. Maybe you remember that.
Of course, Bernard Asset, one of the great photographers of all time.
Okay. And he told me, I was with Champion. You remember Champion, the guy from Renault?
Yep.
Champion, he was, we were 5-6 guys. He was De Paillet, he was a different person,
Yeah, all the French mafia then, basically.
Yeah, the French mafia over there.
Yeah.
And suddenly, Bernard told us, oh, you know who I meet? Nelly. You remember Nelly Arnoux? I said, yeah.
This is René Arnoux' first wife, right?
Yeah, first wife. Yeah. And we told us, she told me, I asked her, I said, if I can call her, and he called her, and we were on a booth, she came, said, she recognized her voice. She said, wow, it was so nice, and everybody recognized her because she's 72, but she was maybe 70, but she was still a young person, compared to our age. And I told her, a book is on my life. If you come to my booth, I will be happy to give you one. And she came to my booth, and I give her one with a word, and number one. I put a note. You have to sign my number one, because number one, a lot of friends from racing sign,
Yeah.
And I have, can be Jackie Stewart, Jackie X, all these people. And she came and said, what are you doing now? I said, oh, now I'm doing life stuff. And she started to crying. I said, what happened? What happened? She said, I was married 32 years with the best man on earth, and he died 3 years ago with cancer. And now I have everything. I have a beautiful apartment in Paris. I have a beautiful home on the Lille One. I have a beautiful home in Courchevel. But my real partner left when René fired me. I found this gentleman. You know where did she find the gentleman? At when they were putting Didier Pironi, when they put in a ground Didier Pironi, 87. She was between 82 and 87 alone, and taking care of her family, of her mom, etc. And 87, she was very close with Catherine Pironi, with Anne-Marie Prost, with all these girls,
Mm-hmm.
And she fell in love with a guy, and they are 32 years together. And now it's a beautiful person.
And now you're together. That's wonderful story.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Nice. And you know what is good? Because I was not good with a woman, with a wife, But she knew me for years, and she knew who I am. You know, I'm somebody very straight. Don't try to do that. Not snobby. I no need to be going to a big restaurant to be happy and make my job, pay my employee, pay my business, you know, running the business, you know. But and now we have a beautiful life. And tonight at home we have Jean-Louis come to see us.
Well, as I say, please say hi. I always remember reading about Rene and Nelly when he was driving for Martini in Formula 2, Formula 3, that he had a dog, or they had a dog, a basset hound called Lotus. Yeah.
Lotus. Yeah. You know why?
I was always impressed by that. I guess something to do with Xabi Kronbach, I guess.
Yeah, Xabi, but at the same time, Xabi get a contract for René in 1976 or something like that. And he received some money, but the contract never finished.
Okay.
And but they were buying the dogs named Lotus because it was a dream for René at this time, yeah.
So this was the dog that Xabi actually had in Paris when he in '67 when he shared the flat with Jim Clark.
It was, I don't know the name.
Basset hound. Basset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Basset.
Small
Brilliant.
world.
Brilliant. What a pleasure to talk to you, Yves, to catch up. Thank you so much for sharing some of your life with us.
Yeah,
I don't know how many racing drivers in the world owe their lives to you and your safety products. It's not something you can ever think about or quantify, but I would imagine it's in the thousands.
Yeah. I don't, you know, the problem is the quantity is, I was doing my best to save life? Yes. Did I one times I lie, bullshit on anything? Never.
No.
Did I try to get a bigger business and more business, try to cheat something? No, never, you know. And I'm at the end of my life, you know. And one day I will be on a cloud number 21 over there, you know? And I will look down and say, my kids are making a very good job, and everybody they take the business in the same spirit, same way. You know what? I'm happy, because what do you expect the best for your kids? To have a good life. You don't expect to give them money. You give them to give them something to do. Like we told in France, you know, don't give fish to your kids. Teach her how to catch fish.
Yves Morizot, what a guy, good friend, and what a tremendous contribution he's made to Formula One and to motorsport in general. You can see there everything from Baja to drag racing, everywhere, just superb. And that whole Stand 21 French Revolution, to me, was one of the golden periods of Formula One. Big thanks to Yves and Stand 21. They've actually just donated, alone, obviously, to the Formula One exhibition, a set of Alain Prost overalls from 1993. Very, very few sets around, but one of the original Alain Prost Stand 21 Williams race suits from his 93 World Championship will make its way shortly to the exhibition. So that's a good thing. Big thanks to them for that as well. So we've got time just for a few more questions. I don't think there's been any change in the way my chat thing is going. I would like to reboot it, but I don't want to lose all the questions that are there. So we've got time for a few more. Nippimoto says, is there any reality that Norris will win the World Drivers Championship? I think he needs a Verstappen DNF at the very least to be in contention. Well, yeah, that is the reality, but it could easily happen. You know, if you're Red Bull and Honda, Red Bull powertrains, Max Verstappen right now, you are focusing 100% on reliability and finishing every race on the basis that when Max has a bad weekend, when the car's not really working, he can usually scrabble together a P5 or P6 at worst. And when it's going quite well, he can be on the podium. It is only reliability really that will beat him, because even if Lando's super quick, Max with reliability should be able to bring it home. But reliability is such a question mark even today, and we saw In Melbourne, we saw that right rear brake explode on the Red Bull. I mean, who would have predicted that? We've seen lots of different retirements from different teams, so anything can happen. And so it is about reliability. Ronnie Harp says Lando winning the championship actually depends on Oscar, because if Max finishes second, he will win the championship. Yeah, but Max isn't going to finish second in every race. And, well, he'd like to, I'm sure. But, well, he'd like to win them. But if he's not, he'd like to finish second. But Max can't go into every race thinking, I'm going to finish second here. He goes into every race wanting to win, because that's the only way you can drive a racing car and you can perform your work. And that's not just him, that's everybody in the garage. But the key is the reliability. Absolutely. So there we go. Sarah Okidoki says, I thought my 7 years of French was going down the drain. Not quite sure what she means by that. Possibly that now she knows that Yves Morizot is there and doing a great job still in French motorsport. There's a lot to live for. G. Blavet Burns says, I'm here, guys. Sorry I'm late, Peter. No worries. We've just had the Yves Morizot interview that I did, the head of Stand 21, who's given us the hands device over the last, well, since 24 years, in fact, of Stand 21 hands device. Is brilliant. James Penrose should deserve a mention too. He was a good guy, worked for Lotus for a while, and he was very much behind selling the hands to drivers very early on. Good man. And if you're wondering why I've got that same question up all the time, it's because my YouTube chat box is frozen. I can see the questions, but when I click on them, they're not coming up on the screen. And rather than mess around with it during a live stream and lose all the questions, I'm just going to read them out slowly and give everybody, hopefully, some sort of mention. Michael Lawler says, how long does Ben Sulayem, the FIA president, have left? This whole swearing thing is ridiculous. Max's terse answers didn't look great, but he made a good point of who everyone is there for. Well, yeah, and I, as I said on Cameron's interview, I think you have to see this in context, which is Max Verstappen has spent his entire life being the best racing driver he can possibly be. And now people are telling him how to talk. You know, it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, I made the point that there are a lot of team media people these days who seem to do not very much except stop their drivers talking to the media. So if instead of wasting time with that, they actually educated their two drivers a little bit along the lines of when it's okay perhaps to be a little bit more free and easy with their lingo than others. In other words, if it's team radio, they've got a chance to bleep it. If it's an FIA press conference, less so, and therefore be a bit more careful about when to use swear words, when to not. You know, in front of sponsors, definitely not. In other environments, yes. So it shouldn't be up to these drivers who've done nothing but race cars all their lives. They've got all these millions of team people everywhere, media people. I don't know what they do. As I said, I was in Singapore, and the one driver, who shall remain nameless but is not a Grand Prix winner, arrived for an interview with 3 team people and 2 bodyguards. I think that's over the top, don't you? And what are they all doing? What do they do, these people, apart from say no? Not very much. So that's where it needs to change, I think. It's up to the teams to educate the drivers a little bit better along the lines of when to push and when to shove. Okay, Roni Hub, Sarah. I watch Formula One on Canal Plus, a French channel, and for the record, they pronounce it Leclerc. Yeah, I'm sure they do. Lots of people make mistakes. I mean, for many years, the BBC used to call him Alan Prost. Doesn't mean to say it's right. Kevin Pryor, Mercs are so on-off, right? You never know which Mercedes will turn up each session. Well, yeah, that's small sweet spot for you. That's not getting the best from the tyres and a very small operating window for temperatures. And that's the problem with Mercedes. That's the problem in 2020, these regulations since 2022. If you don't get it right, it used to be bouncing. Now it's just the size of the sweet spot. And it's Lee Kambanga. Nice super chat. Thank you very much. Can Red Bull go back and develop the RB19 for next year? Well, who knows? I mean, to me, as I said, I think the 20 is probably a quicker car. We're just seeing McLaren much more competitive than they were, and Ferrari a bit more competitive than they were not on a regular basis, but on an infrequent basis. That's what's happening. And as I said, more cars are going to reach the limit of what can be done by the law of averages. If you have the regulations unchanged for long enough, even Sauber will get it right eventually, I suppose. But that's what we're seeing. Just more teams getting it. So it's a bit of a double whammy. On the one hand, I think Red Bull have probably lost their way a little bit with this car. But on the other hand, we've seen McLaren find a really, really good area on which to operate the car. Sarah says, I want the old style of tyres. What does that mean, really? Michelin back? I'd love to see Michelin back. I'd love to see Bridgestone back. I'd love to see tyre war and tyre competition. I mean, you're speaking to a guy or listening to a guy who once after the, I don't know when it was, pre-season, I guess. No, it was the end of the year, I think. We did a Goodyear tyre test at Kyalami with Nigel and Nelson. And it was 4 or 5 days of running. And then we went to Cape Town for a week, had some fun. It was just brilliant. And then there was Jackie Stewart, always talks about when he was testing for Dunlop in the early Tyrrell F1 Matra days. They were getting $100 a lap or something, which was a fortune then. So, yeah. Rhinos, Racestream 66. Colapinto's a rock star. Yeah, he's really that, isn't he? He's really good. Really good. And what's he going to be doing next year, though? What is he going to be doing? It's a bit of a shame, isn't it? If I was Audi, I would sign him up and put him in the Sauber next year. But I don't think they can do that. He wants to race, doesn't he? SGD Ravenrush. Hi, Peter. What are your thoughts on Max potentially calling it quits at the end of the season despite winning the championship or not? No, I don't think he'll do that. I think like all of us, he's going to be intrigued to see what the 26 car is going to be like and whether Red Bull are going to have a significant advantage or not. I think if the Red Bull 26 car is not very good, I think he might then rethink it all. If he doesn't have an offer to go to whatever happens to have the team happens to have a decent car, he might well go off and do some rallying or something. But I don't see him doing that now. He's got half a reasonable chance of winning the World Championship in 26 as well. Sorry, 25. So if he assumes he wins it this year, he's got half a chance, if not more than half, of winning in 25. I don't think he'd do that. Pratik Barol, what's your gut feeling for the remaining 2 seats, Sauber and Haas? Well, as I say, if I was Audi, I'd be signing Colapinto and putting him in the Sauber. Haas is not. I think the Haas is done, isn't it? I think Haas is Ocon and Biermann. Am I wrong there? And I think actually Sauber's done. I think they've re-signed Valtteri, and I think Guanyo's been confirmed. I may be wrong. Nippy Moto, watching Norris's pole lap at Singapore, I must say I wasn't massively impressed. Long corner driver. Yeah, but I think in those conditions, with 1 lap, no mistakes, tyre temperature's a bit of a question mark, need to get out, good car, quite big sweet spot relative to the others. Lando's way of driving was absolutely spot on. And we saw what happened with Oscar. Just got away from him, whether or not he was getting into the corner a bit early and then got on the power fraction too soon, did something quite right. I don't know. I didn't see the beginning of it. But to me, as I said, Max started to lengthen his corners a bit as well as the Singapore weekend progressed, as I showed at the beginning of this video when I did that comparison with Perez. So I think that wasn't a bad way to go into that race, and for the lap that they did around Singapore, I think slightly longer corners than perhaps you would have in ideal conditions was not a bad thing. Minir Sijon, why is Lando not becoming world champion? It's a funny question, that. What do you mean by that? Do you think he never will? He could easily win the championship next year, and if the McLaren continue the dominance they have now. Dominance is the wrong word. They're not dominating, but continue the superiority they have now. Lando could win the Drivers' Championship next year. So watch this space. We have a super chat here. Question: would it be mid-season allowed to switch teams, Max to McLaren or so, and still become world champion? Contract wouldn't allow it, but would it be possible the FIA regulations wise? Thanks, Peter. It's a very, very good question. I don't think it is. No, I don't think you could do that. I don't know. It's a very good question. I think I'll have to defer to somebody more intelligent than I for that one. obviously for the constructors it wouldn't make a difference. Let's just think about it. Are you eligible? Yes, I think you would be eligible for points. I mean, you certainly were in the old days. I mean, John Surtees won the Belgian Grand Prix for Ferrari, and then he won the Mexican Grand Prix for Cooper in the same year. And he got those points. It's not to say it's relevant today, but I think you would. Yeah, I think you would. I mean, whether or not it would ever happen, given today's contracts and everything, is another matter, of course, but I think you would. Oh, okay, Sarah says she wants the old tyre style back. Degradation. Okay, she wants degradation. Okay, well, we got degradation. Well, no degradation, maybe. Jonathan Warwood says, I would like more strategy in these races. I'd like to see one complete lap on each compound. When you say complete lap, you mean flying lap, I guess, on each compound. Well, at the moment, Pirelli are doing all they can to come up with regulations so that they have to build as fewer tyres as possible and save money. So if you start having, I mean, I understand, even if it's a qualifying soft tyre, one lap's not going to be a problem. Would that be strategy, though? Be a mess, wouldn't it? I hear what you say, and you have to plan when you're going to do that lap and all the rest of it, and traffic and everything else. To me, I'd much rather have a straight motor race myself and all that stuff. It's maybe because I'm not bright enough to be able to get my head around all that strategy. I mean, there's a category of racing where strategy is really important. Isn't that called World Endurance Championship? Go and do all that, the fuel and the power, the weight thing and all that rubbish. Do it all there. I mean, Formula One should be much purer than that. Fast car, fast driver, win the race. Pretty straightforward, isn't it? Facts gone wacky. Max was right. Formula One is becoming too restricted, too much orchestrated, too many controls. Even if I can do without the swearing, it's part of the adrenaline. We should then stop royals, soccer, etc. Well, he's right. You know, definitely. I've been bemoaning the amount of control, and certainly the journalistic thing is ridiculous. How you're not allowed to do interviews unless you give the questions in advance, and not allowed to ask this, not allowed to ask that, not allowed to talk about the technology, even though Formula One loves to sell itself as the pinnacle of technology. Ghastly Ghoul, this is another super chat, thank you. Hi Peter, can you believe that the two guys leading the World Championship are also streamers on the side, just like you? Lando's streaming sim racing. Yeah, I mean, they're doing a lot more activity, aren't they, with their streaming? But nonetheless, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, wow, good thing. I don't know about all that sim stuff and that gaming. I suppose it's all right. Me, I'd rather be in Chile right now, watching the Rally of Chile, I think. Another super chat. As soon as Honda, this is from Leonardo Silva da Rosa. Nice name. As soon as Honda leaves Red Bull, is Yuki guaranteed to go with them? Any chance of him going to Red Bull, do you think? No, he's staying on. Well, yeah, I mean, we've always had that question mark about Yuki's career. He's obviously staying on in 25. The only team running Honda engines in 26 is Aston Martin, and he's not going to go there. So I think it'll be the last we'll see of Yuki at the end of next year, probably. But if he massively improves and wins a couple of races next year, you know, he's going to get an offer of a decent drive somewhere else. But if he stays about where he is, I can't see him getting another drive, to be honest. Yeah, he's good, but he's plateauing out a little bit, I think. So this very troublesome YouTube chat box is. I'm just skimming through now, trying to see if there's any other super chats. I don't want to miss them. Somebody. Okay, somebody's answered that question, actually. They've said, Peter Carroll Kraus, thank you very much, Peter. It says, drivers get their points and the teams get theirs. Teams are legal entities, says Conservator. You can't even change their names too much. Like Behrman. Yeah, Behrman got points, didn't he? There you go. Thanks for clarifying, Mark. Yeah, good example. Ollie Berman, who drove superbly, I thought, in Baku. And look how he showed up Kevin Magnussen. There's more things to hit in Baku than in Singapore, and yet Kevin went off in Singapore at one point, and there was Berman. Yeah, had a bit of a touch, but beautiful race. And they can't. I mean, Kevin's obviously contracted to drive for the rest of the year, but they must be thinking. No disrespect to Kevin, having said all that, but they must be thinking, "Oh, what a shame we can't run Berman for the remaining 6 races." Okay. Sebastian Verduri says, "I'm in Chile, Peter, and I'm watching you outside my house, so part of you is here as well. Thank you very much." Yeah, it's the shakedown stage on right now, isn't it? It looks absolutely beautiful, the Chile, Rally of Chile roads, special stages. Can't wait. So, Randall Feliciano says, "Can you explain what is the concern with Red Bull owning VCARB? Doesn't Mercedes own Williams and Ferrari? Haas, what's the difference?" Oh, no, there's a massive difference. Mercedes don't own Williams and Ferrari don't own Haas. They supply power units and drivetrains and some technology. But in the case of Red Bull actually bought the Minardi Formula One team in order to give Scott Speed a drive. And then they've kept it ever since. And it's had various names, obviously. But it's owned 100% by Red Bull. So that's the thing. People are saying, well, each team has to design and build its own car, has to have its own intellectual property rights. But, there's an argument that a lot of that is Red Bull mix and match between the A and the B team. So that's what the concern is. But to me, it's still astonishing that more people in Formula One are not nervous about the Haas Dallara situation. And people just accept it now. Oh, well, the car's built by Dallara. And they don't worry about the fact that Haas don't actually design and build their own car. They get Dallara to do it. Or the build, anyway. And that, to me, I thought that would be like a stopgap thing for a year or two, not ongoing. And as was pointed out, Dallara is a serious company, and they're doing incredibly well. And a lot of the credit for how well the Haas Ferrari is going this year should go to Dallara. But nobody cares. Everybody's happy about that. Okay, fine. But, it's odd, isn't it, that they just allow them to get on with it like that. George Sanchez, "Hi, Peter. Greetings from New York City. Deeply grateful for your weekly insights and wisdom. Do you think Colapinto's authenticity plus rawness will be ironed out, stifled by media training?" Probably. He's got a good manager, Jamie Campbell-Walter, but now already I suspect Williams are going to take it over, and you want to do anything with Franco, you got to do it through Williams. So that's probably the end of all that. But I think he's a genuinely nice, cool guy that isn't going to change much. And I'll tell you somebody else who isn't going to change much, and that's Jack Doohan. He's going to be very, say what it is, get on with it. And because Flav's there, Flav will encourage that, actually. So I think you'll see a lot of good stuff from Jack Doohan in the Alpine next year in terms of interviews and things. So, yeah, we've solved the thing along the drivers thing with the Berman deal, so that's good. Ollie Berman, didn't he drive well in Baku? Amazing. So I'm just going back through now. Michael Romero, "Peter, is your voice in ACC game? I swear I heard you in the pits interviewing." Probably. I think I remember signing something. Somebody saying, somebody's getting a massive amount of money out of this game. Would you please give you permission to use your voice in the background, Peter? I said, yeah, sure. Anything to help somebody else make some money. No problem. Peter, not Pete, says 3 times Monaco winner, 3 years straight. He doesn't like it when strangers call him Pete. Well, actually, I don't mind it at all. It's just that Pete Lyons was Pete Lyons, and I revered Pete Lyons, still do. He's just on a book, by the way. So if you want to read beautiful English prose and wonderful Formula One stories from the 70s, go and buy Pete Lyons' books. But he was Pete, so I had to be Peter, really. But I think my sister calls me Pete still, from memory. My mum she does call me Pete sometimes. Yeah, I'm okay with Pete Windsor. Sounds a bit funny though, Peter Windsor, 2 syllable. So that was awesome. Thanks, Peter. Oh, I think that's about the Yves Morizo. Yeah, what a lovely guy. What a lovely guy. Facts gone wacky. Peter, what's your point of view of Flavio going back? Is the position of Renault not strange? Engine from third party. Recently got extra dollar investment boost. To me, the dummy, it seems they're preparing for a sale. Yeah, I think they are. I think Ollie Oakes, really good bloke, but I think he and Flav, there's quite a lot of Russian stroke Saudi money around there. And I think you'll see a sale where Flav and Bernie probably still plays backgammon with Flav quite regularly. They're probably plotting a takeover of that, I would imagine. So yeah, and then of course when the Saudis buy Formula One from Liberty, presumably Bernie and Max will come back and run Formula One again, won't they? All normal again. Cynical, Windsor, you are cynical. No, but I do think there will be changes there, and I think Flav he's very good at having an overall view. A bit like me, really, I suppose. Don't want to get your hands dirty, just give the opinion about where it should all be going. But Flav has the power and the control, and he's got the right people to whom to talk, hasn't he? And Flav says, well, get rid of that engine, and get rid of that driver, and sack that engineer, and they just do it. So, fair enough. I think Ollie will be good there. He's a good man, and it'll be a better team next year for sure. Pierre Gasly's good, Jack Doohan's good. 2 good races there, and a bit of clearing of the crud. So I think it'll be all right. Flavio, I think Flavio is what he is, and he's a bit like, he's like a sort of intelligent Jean-Marie Balest. It's very easy to read. I mean, people always go on about Balest and how difficult he was, but the thing about Balest was just so easy to read. You knew exactly what he was going to say, and that's why Bernie always had him twisted around his little finger. And it's the same with Flav. Basically you know what Flav's going to do at any given moment. He's very easy to read, I think, anyway. Creative expression by Dion. I think this is reply, actually. Modern Formula One is so error dependent. Without DRS, we'd have so little overtaking. Will that change with the new regs with movable aero surfaces? Will this change? I don't agree with that comment, actually. I think that the new circuits are so similar and with very long straights, tight corners. I think there's massive opportunities for overtaking with draft, with proper slipstreaming again. And I'm not convinced that overtaking is the be-all and end-all of the success of Formula One anyway. And I don't like the accentuated speed differential that DRS creates in certain quite dangerous situations. So there you go. I think, as I said before, instead of focusing on things like DRS and reverse grids and all these cheap fixes, I think they should focus more on expanding the show, the quality of the show they produce. And we should have, as I've said before a million times, we should be miking up the engineers in the pit lane. We should be filming the drivers' briefings. We should be having GoPros in the road cars to and from the track. We should have a Netflix for the engineers, for the motorhomers, and for the mechanics. We should make the whole Formula One thing work, and we should be building mega circuits in the middle of the deserts, which are all replicas of the great classic circuits. Start doing some of that. Oh, and we should have radio conversations between the drivers live during the race. One driver should be able to talk to another driver in another team. Forget all that team to car Strat 3 rubbish. What we should have is Lewis talking to Charles Leclerc in the middle of the race. That's what we want. Team radio is one of the best things in Formula One, and we're underusing it at the moment. It's all bogged down in all that technology. What we want is the drivers to be able to chat to one another in a nice, pleasant way during the race. You get my gist. So here we go. That was in answer to Mickles Allen from Cairns, Australia. G'day, mate. He's saying if we remove DRS, I think it'd be very positive, very good thing. Get rid of DRS. Can't stand it. Don't like artificial things, like real things. Big question mark. If you've got 2 cars, both of them mega quick, light, agile cars, one of them is H-pattern manual shift, the other is state-of-the-art sequential. Which one would you choose? Good question, isn't it? Creative Expression says, sadly we've had to lose some brilliant drivers across multiple types of cars to force auto racing in general to worry more and more about driver safety, since we're speaking of the hands device. Yeah, well, exactly. Which safety innovation do you believe has saved more lives than others? Creative Expression says. Carbon fiber tubs, says Peter Carroll Krause. Fuel cells, I'd have to agree. Safer barriers I'd have to include, plus what they're discussing now with the hands is close to being on top of the list. Well, I'm glad that people are saying that about the hands, because it is exceptionally good. I think the halo has been very good as well. Every step forward, by and large, has worked very well. It's just taken too long. I mean, when Ronnie sadly had his accident at Monza in '78, and Vittorio Brambilla was hit by a flying wheel and was unconscious for a long time. We're talking several hours. And I remember writing a piece after that. Obviously, everyone was broken up about Ronnie, me included. But I did say, the time has come to have better protection for the drivers in the cockpit area, whether it's a forward brace rollover bar, you have forward bracing here, but we've got to have more protection for the side of the driver helmet. Nothing happened. Nobody took any interest, and there was just a big fear that if the car was upside down, the forward brace bar would make it more difficult for the driver to get out if it was on fire. That was why they never went for it. And now we've solved the problem with the halo, but it took how many years? 78 it became critical, and it's taken far too long. Peter Carroll-Kraus is talking about the Greg Moore car. Greg, I'm lucky enough to meet Greg the year before, maybe it's the same year in which he lost his life. I met him in Michigan. He was absolutely superb. Absolutely no doubt at all this guy could have been a hero in Formula One. Just so sad, that accident. Great guy too. So anyway, Creative Expression by Dion reveals that he's a 61-year-old fan from the US who grew up loving NASCAR, but yet always loving Formula One. As a McLaren fan, I'm hoping when the new engine rigs come out, Mercedes are the best. Yeah, Mercedes won't be very happy if yet again they get blown away by the customer team, will they? But anyway, there you go. What else have we got here? John MCF. Hi, Peter. What are your thoughts on Tommy Byrne? I think he's Formula One's biggest wasted talent for lack of money and an abrasive attitude, just as fast as Senna, without all the money behind him. Yeah, knew Tommy very well when he was in Formula 3, and he was extremely good. And we became good friends, actually. I used to play squash with him once a week in my house, near my house in London. We used to hook up. He used to give me a lot of tapes, cassettes, music that he liked. From memory, Steely Dan, I think, and other stuff like that. Pretty good. And yeah, he didn't get a proper test when he won that McLaren Formula One test at Silverstone. For some reason, Tyler Alexander just never really thought that Tommy Byrne was going to make it. And as Tommy tells the story, or told the story to me over lunch at a pub a couple of days later, it was just like, what am I doing here? Because quite obviously they don't want me in the car. Everything that happened was negative, and he never had a chance to show his ability at all. But there's no doubt at all, in Formula 3, he was exceptionally good. I can't say he was as good as Senna, but he wasn't far away. But then again, Johnny Dumfries was really good in Formula 3 as well. And he struggled a bit in Formula 1, in fairness to Johnny. So Tommy, and when I knew Tommy, he wasn't an abrasive personality. He was a funny Irish guy, and he was kind and normal, just a good friend. And that was the Tommy Byrne I know. And a lot of people today see him as quite abrasive and all the rest of it, but not the Tommy Byrne that I knew. Just a great shame. One of the many great talents never to make it. I mean, Stephen South was another. I know it was a different ending, obviously, of that accident he had in Trois-Rivières, but he was incredibly good as well. And then I think, obviously, of Tom Price, Tony Bryce, Roger Williams. I know, again, different stories. There's so much lost talent. It's just heartbreaking. I'm going to have to wind it up now, guys. I think, yeah, definitely. I've got another call coming in very soon. Okay, we're talking about this. Be Nice UK. George confirmed that Lewis didn't agree and that the team went ahead anyway. Mercedes regularly ignores his tyre wishes, like in Canada and Monaco. Blame is on Mercedes. We need to ask questions. Well, if that's the case, that is absolutely inexcusable. And equally, unbelievably generous of Lewis to say we win and lose as a team. I find that hard to believe, to be honest. I really find it hard to believe that a racing driver puts himself in a position where he's actually told to start on tyres he doesn't want to start on. If Formula One has got to that state, I'm absolutely shocked. And drivers shouldn't be in that position. And teams shouldn't put drivers in that position either. Apart from anything else, it's just not getting the best from the driver. So, anyway. Fast one, creative expression. A lot of questions from creative expression by Dion. So here we go. With the new engine regs coming into effect in 26, which engine manufacturer do you expect to have the edge in power the first year? Will it be Mercedes? Well, a lot of people think it will be, but it's a slightly different Mercedes powertrain now. And the head guy, Andy Cowell, who was behind the last Mercedes arrival, is now at Honda with Aston Martin and Adrian Newey. And Honda, of course, have moved with Adrian Newey to Aston Martin. So there's a very good argument for saying that'll be an incredible power unit. Adrian knows Honda really well. And Adrian would have played quite a big role in setting up of the Honda Red Bull powertrain division anyway in Milton Keynes. So they'll be taking all that information to Aston Martin now. And Adrian knows the Honda people very well. Andy Cowell is as good as it comes to managing operations like that. So that's going to be very strong in my opinion. But don't underestimate Phil Prue at Red Bull powertrain with Ford either. Got a lot of time for Phil Prue, so I think they'll be there. But they'll all be there. Will they? I don't know. I think that none of us know how it's going to go. And it's going to be, I suppose, interesting is the word. It's a shame it's 50% electrification in a way, but I understand why they've done it. So anyway, there we go. There are more questions, but I'm a bit irritated by the whole YouTube chat box thing not working this time. It's the first time it hasn't worked, really. It's just frozen into that position. It won't allow me to put everybody's name up there, which I enjoy doing, giving everybody a bit of bit of exposure. So it's a shame. But anyway, thanks so much, everybody, for watching and being with me on this live stream. It's been great. I'll do some more. We've got a bit of a break for Austin, so I'll do another one before then. And if you've got friends who are Spanish or Portuguese speaking, remember we've got 2 new channels now, Peter Windsor Portuguese and Peter Windsor Espanol, and that covers obviously Brazil, Portugal on the Portuguese side, and then all Spanish speaking countries on the other, and they're both new channels, so they need all your help to get up there, get some subscribers going, tell friends and colleagues about them if you're in parts of the world like that. And I think you'll enjoy the way we're doing the videos in those languages. I've shown them prototypes, if you like, to various people over the weekend in Singapore, and everyone to a person was blown away by the quality and how good they are in terms of those languages. So have a look. I think you'll be quite impressed. I hope you will be anyway. So there we go. Thank you very much, everyone, and see you soon. Take care. This weekend, lots going on, of course. We've got Rally of Chile, Spanish Open Golf. That's more than enough, isn't it? Going up to Madrid for that, I think. See what happens. Anyway, take care. Thanks for watching.